In a battle-gen-heavy MMO called Pandemic World Online, kingdoms clash across vast battlefields, armies marching beneath castle walls in constant warfare. Amid the chaos, a warrior, a thief, and a mage stand together as an enemy closes in. Kisaragi Tuya moves through the fight as one of the players caught in this world's endless war. Archers unleash flaming arrows on command as the battle intensifies. Tuya's side belongs to the kingdom of Generata, locked in combat against the kingdom of Luneta. The three kingdoms fight without pause to control the land, while the neutral kingdom of Sifancy sends mercenaries to both sides as support, profiting from the endless conflict. Armored knights push through a fortified gate, clashing at the breach as smoke rises from the ruined walls behind them. A mage and priest, both near level, sitting in watch in shock, as an ally deflects an attack using nothing but a sword. The game's level cap sits at Jojo, and only the top 590 of players ever reach level Wudiniun. Tuya is one of those rare few. Having surpassed level Tiriniun, he stands as the strongest player in the game, his name recognized across every kingdom. His blade tears through the enemy line in a single motion, the strike so overwhelming that even his opponents call it unfair. Back in Generata's central plaza, the tavern fills with cheer. Tuya opened the path that let his army seize the win, and the town celebrates their victory with drinks and laughter. Praised for his performance, Tuya brushes off the credit, insisting the win belonged to everyone's combined effort, rather than himself alone. His allies note how encouraging it is to fight alongside someone who broke past level Chidoniun, remarking that he seems like a different person once battle begins. Tuya admits he appreciates the praise, revealing that reaching this level cost him countless sleepless nights and everything he had to give. Talk turns practical as the group agrees to sort through their spoils before heading out again, considering a hunting trip to Loraruka Cave. Among the day's rewards is a magic robe, useless to a berserker like him. Tuya decides to log out for a moment to deal with his inventory. A second character steps forward, lighter and unburdened by armor, distinct from the towering berserker Tuya usually commands. The others recognize the shift immediately, realizing he keeps a separate mage account, just to hold the overflow of items he has collected. Tuya explains that since his main character can't carry it all, this second account exists purely as storage for the things he no longer needs. He admits he put real effort into designing this backup character, despite its purpose, calling it a waste even as his friends prepare to hunt without him. Since this account sits at level 1. Without warning, light erupts beneath his feet. A summoning circle activates around him, and confusion spreads as he questions whether it is some kind of bug. On the other side of the light, a woman crowned and waiting reacts to the glow before her, wondering aloud who has just appeared. The princess arrives at what looks like the summoning chamber, celebrated by the old man beside her for succeeding on her first attempt. Tuya finds himself kneeling on unfamiliar stone floor, confused, unable to understand where he has ended up or why the monitor he expected is gone. The woman introduces herself as Sharon von Generata, first princess of the Generata kingdom, and greets him with excitement as the hero they've been waiting for, embracing him before, catching herself and apologizing for the outburst. She explains that her kingdom has been locked in war with Luneta, losing countless lives and vast stretches of land in the process. To change their fortunes, they used their national treasure, the Jewel of Invocation, to summon him to their world. The cost was steep. Innocent women and children lost in the process of making the summoning possible. Sharon hesitates, noting he looks far younger than expected for a hero. Tuya, still trying to process everything, can only describe himself as a 35-year-old office worker. He notices his hands look unusually youthful and reaches up to find long platinum hair where there shouldn't be any, stunned by the sudden change in his own body. An official asks him to check his status, explaining that it would confirm whether he is truly the hero, just as a guard snaps at him for standing so casually before the princess, prompting Sharon to calm the guard down. His status window appears. Tuya Kisaragi, human, male, 16 years old, occupation mage, title, the one who was invoked, level 1. No abilities, no magic, but blessed with the special ability of appraisal. The gathered nobles press him about what title he holds, and he admits there is no mention of hero anywhere on his status. Instead, it simply reads, the one who was invoked. When asked about his level, he answers plainly that he is at level 1, contradicting everyone's belief that summoned heroes always arrive far stronger than that. Tuya suggests they may have grabbed the wrong person entirely and asks if they could send him back to where he came from, sparking outrage among the officials over how a hero could possibly be this weak. A scholar reveals that the Jewel of Invocation has a counterpart known as the Jewel of Counter-Invocation, said to be capable of returning whoever was summoned back to their original world. Before they can send him home, The priest explains. The ceremony of invocation must be performed once more to complete the process. This particular ritual can only be carried out once every few years, and only under the light of a full moon, with barely enough magic power left to cast it a single additional time. Sharon expresses relief at his willingness to cooperate, and Tuya asks whether the counter-ceremony could be arranged for the very next day. The princess gives the order to prepare the jewel for the ritual. As the ceremony begins, the priest hands Sharon a mana potion to fuel the spell, but a hostile figure bursts in, forcing the guards to intervene and shove the intruder aside as the ritual proceeds. The jewel of invocation shatters under the surge of light, far brighter than before, while elsewhere a fully armored warrior stirs awake in the rain, disoriented. The newly summoned warrior identifies his class as Sacred Knight and Hero when the officials ask him to state his title. The girls in the room stunned at what they hear. The gathered nobles erupt in celebration, certain this time that the ritual has worked, and their kingdom will finally be saved. Sharon urges him to leave with her since the king himself is waiting to meet the hero, and she tells him she has waited her whole life for someone like him. He silently notes that his stats and abilities line up impressively well with his level, giving him confidence in his own potential going forward. Orders are given to prepare everything for the hero's arrival, and the news is passed along to inform the Congress immediately of what has happened, leaving Tuya to wonder where he now stands in all of it. The new hero is told to rest in the guest room until the ceremony of counter-invocation can be arranged, and he accepts calmly while a maid excuses herself to attend to him. Tuya, however, wakes to find himself gripping iron bars instead of any guest room, shouting in confusion at the sight in front of him. He realizes immediately that wherever he has been placed, surrounded by crates and barrels, it clearly isn't the guest room he was promised. A hand sets down a covered plate, and the maid informs him that food has been left inside for him. Uncovering the plate, he finds only a small bowl of soup and a single piece of bread, staring at the meager portion in disbelief. Confused onlookers whisper that this must be the mage they created, watching him curiously as he takes in the sparse room around him, having finished the little food he was given. Tuya lies back on the bed, questioning aloud why he ended up in a place like this at all. Hunger gnaws at him as he sits there, wishing he had more to eat, too uncomfortable to fall asleep with his stomach growling, half joking to himself that it probably won't work in this world anyway. He decides to try opening his storage regardless. To his shock, the dimensional storage responds, spilling open with a flood of listed items in front of him. He stares at the overflowing inventory, stunned that these are the exact same items he had stashed away on his old Mage account back in the game. Word spreads quickly, and someone refers to him now as a guest from another world, watching him with a mix of curiosity and caution. An elderly official announces that they'll proceed with the ceremony of counter-invocation to send him home. Since the princess is occupied elsewhere, the old man explains that he'll be the one completing the ceremony himself this time, flanked by armored guards as he steps forward. He introduces himself as a court mage, assuring everyone there is nothing to worry about, as the ritual circle is prepared in the courtyard below for the ceremony to begin. Looking out over the city below, Tuya mutters that he'll have a lot of work ahead tomorrow, resigned to the fact that he'll finally be heading back home. The court mage announces the start of the ceremony as guards and attendants stand watch around the summoning circle. Banners rise and the old mage lifts his staff high, chanting through the ritual with the summoning orb glowing at the circle's center. Caught in the surge of light, Tuya thinks to himself that with this, he'll finally continue living in his own world again. But instead of home, he finds himself staring up at the same unfamiliar castle and city. The old mage's voice echoing that this is simply what happens to the lost people of this land. He wakes sprawled in an open field under two suns, completely disoriented, asking aloud what happened and why he is still in this world at all, calling it a joke, kneeling in the grass. The reality sets in as he realizes he truly cannot go back to his own world. Under two suns hanging over an unfamiliar plain, Tuya stood alone and asked himself if he could ever return to his own world again. He tightened the collar of his cloak, steadying his breathing as he took in the strange land around him, then began walking through the empty grassland with nothing but the clothes on his back. With no clear answer to guide him, he climbed onto a rock and stared out at the horizon, forced to face the same question over and over. How was he supposed to live from here on? His parents were already gone, and he had no siblings left to worry about him. Even his job back home had likely written him off as missing by now. His stomach growled, reminding him that survival came first. Then he remembered something important. The storage he had carried over from the game. He focused, and an item materialized in his hand with a soft pop. It had actually worked. A stack of 96 loaves of bread sat before him. He pulled one out, watching the count drop, then sat on the rock and ate in silence. Once his hunger eased, His mind cleared. Complaining wouldn't change his situation, so he decided the first step was to check exactly what he had at hand. He began pulling items out one after another: a helmet, a shield, gear he hadn't touched in years. His storage was still full of everything he had collected during his time playing the game. Among the pile was a massive blade, the very first Buster sword he had ever wielded. Holding it again brought back memories of countless battles. He gripped the hilt and swung it toward a nearby tree, testing whether his body could still handle its weight. The blade cut cleanly, and he found his movements coming back to him. It wasn't the elegant weapon of a priest, but it worked, and that was enough. With his gear sorted, he set his sights on the horizon. His next goal was simple: find a town or a village. Walking alone would take too long. He recalled the horse he had once used before switching to a faster mount at level 100, still sitting untouched in his storage. He summoned it, and the ground shook as a massive wild-maned horse appeared before him, far bigger than he remembered. Its sheer size caught him off guard. It towered over him. The horse nudged him roughly with its nose, gnawing at his shoulder in what looked like play. He froze, unsure how to react. He calmed himself, remembering his goal. He asked the horse plainly if it would let him ride toward a place where people lived. As the horse's hooves pounded against the trail winding through the hills, he looked ahead and quietly recognized this moment as the true beginning of his new life. The horse broke into a full sprint, and Tuiya's composure vanished as he screamed and clung on for dear life across the open field. A curtain flapped in the wind as Tuiya clung to the horse, terrified he was about to be thrown off and killed by the speed. Ahead of him, a merchant carriage was under attack. Goblins swarmed a group of escorts, fighting desperately to hold them back. One goblin sneered, wondering if it could take on the newcomers, despite being nothing more than a low-level priest. Tuiya, still shaken by the chaos, wondered if this was simply how sudden battles unfolded in this world. Before he could think it through, he called out to the horse, asking if it could help the escorts. The horse's eyes flared, and it charged straight into the goblins without hesitation. The escorts froze in shock as the horse tore through the goblin ranks, scattering them effortlessly. Tuiya held on for dear life, dragged along for the ride. The goblins scrambled to react, shouting warnings to each other, but the horse was already among them, trampling through their formation. In moments, the goblins lay defeated across the road. The horse came to a stop, and Tuiya sat frozen, hand over his mouth, still processing what had just happened. He noticed the escorts eyeing him warily, clearly unsure what to make of the stranger who had just crashed into their fight. He quickly apologized, explaining that the horse hadn't listened to him and acted on its own. One of the escorts brushed it off, saying it was incredible he could even ride a battle horse at all, and thanked him for saving them. The horse nuzzled against Tuiya, and someone remarked how attached it seemed to him. He clarified again that it had charged in entirely on its own. The group turned out to be guards escorting merchants, hired through a request from the Adventurers Guild. One merchant thanked him warmly, admitting they'd been trembling inside the carriage, and said the whole scene felt just like the isekai stories he'd read in light novels. A wounded goblin spoke up, suggesting it would put them at ease if Tuiya traveled together with the group toward the town. The escort offered to handle dismantling the subjugation proof for him, mentioning there was a guild in town as well. The merchant seemed relieved to hear it would help him out. When Tuiya admitted he didn't know what subjugation proof was, the escort looked surprised. The escort explained that it served as proof of having defeated a monster, something the guild would exchange for money. The merchant insisted on handling it personally as thanks for saving them, then explained that for this type of monster, only the right ear could be taken instead of a magic stone. Tuiya thanked them sincerely, and the two escorts smiled, holding up the proof they'd collected together. Later, one of them suggested he register as an adventurer at the guild, believing he had what it took. Since he couldn't explain the real reason he was there, he decided to simply tell them his memory was vague. Watching the flames crackle, Tuiya admitted that becoming an adventurer might not be such a bad way to live in this world after all. He asked what that meant, and learned it was a magic tool used to form a master-servant bond between a person and a monster. As stars filled the sky, one escort took the night watch, remarking how rare it was for a battle horse to bond with a person, since even high-ranking adventurers struggled to own one. Tuiya turned to the horse and called out to it, then sat quietly beside it on the rocks, watching the stars stretch over the water. By morning they reached the town of Fendi. Before entering, he faced the horse one more time and asked if it would truly acknowledge him as its master. Then stepped through the gates with a proud declaration that they'd arrived. The streets were full of life, stalls stacked with fresh goods, vendors calling out, and the merchant beside him marveled at how lively the town felt. Tuiya spotted beastmen walking among the crowd and gasped in excitement. Soon after, the group reached the point where their paths split, and the merchant thanked him warmly for everything. Before parting, one of the escorts suggested they grab drinks together at the pub once things settled down. Tuya agreed happily. Standing before the Adventurer Guild's Fendi branch, he took a breath and declared to himself that he was going to become an adventurer, then stepped forward with the horse trailing behind him. He reminded the horse firmly to wait outside, but it pushed its head straight through the door anyway. Staff at the entrance scrambled, begging the horse to behave itself, while Tuya lingered nearby, worrying whether it would actually listen. Inside, the guild hall buzzed with adventurers of every kind, warriors, mages, and mercenaries filling the space beneath a large chandelier. Nerves crept in as he studied the request board covered in job postings, quietly wondering if he was really going to be okay doing this. He approached the counter and announced firmly that he wanted to register as an adventurer. The receptionist looked up and asked what he needed. After hearing him out, she also picked up on something else, that he wanted to form a subordination contract with his horse. When she realized it was a battle horse, a B-ranked monster, she was stunned. She handed him a registration form to fill out. He hesitated, surprised that the letters in this world matched ones he could somehow read. She explained the final step. 1 drop of blood placed into the crystal would complete his registration. The moment his blood touched it, the crystal absorbed his magic power and pulled out his information. She then handed him his finished guild card. The card listed him as Tuya, a level 1 priest from the kingdom of Sarandir, registered at 18 at the Fendi branch. She explained he could take requests up to 1 rank above his own, meaning E-rank jobs for now. He held the card up. Finally an adventurer. Last came the subordination contract itself. A bangle meant for the master and a necklace. The monster would need to accept willingly, sealing the bond between them. With the contract items in hand, Tuya asked if there was any other question left, then brought up something else on his mind. Whether the receptionist knew of an inn that would accept his battle horse. She hesitated over a few names, admitting some places were too high class for such a request, then trailed off trying to think of a better option. A staff member stepped in cheerfully, introducing herself with a salute as Milya, greeting Tuya warmly. He returned the greeting, glad to meet her. But before the conversation could continue about the horse, a commotion broke out nearby. Ropes and debris flew through the air as people were knocked off their feet, sending confusion through the guild hall. Someone shouted that a huge horse was on a rampage outside, and Tuya's stomach dropped as he realized exactly which horse it was. Outside, the horse reared up amid the market stalls, neighing wildly as a vendor pushed his cart aside in a panic. Tuya rushed over, asking what was wrong. The horse refused to calm down, and a frightened onlooker demanded someone get rid of it. Tuya spotted the source of the trouble, adventurers from the guild standing nearby. The horse stomped its hoof hard, declaring firmly that it would not go with them, no matter what. A vendor explained that the horse's rarity was exactly the problem. Some adventurer had tried to tie it up with rope and steal it away, which set it off. Another bystander muttered that it served the adventurers right, since people like that were usually up to no good anyway. Offering Tuya a skewer of the local specialty meat to cheer him up, he realized then just how badly the horse hated being separated from him. A passerby mentioned that familiars without proper subordination proof were often targeted and stolen for exactly this reason. Later, sitting together, Tuya remarked that the horse had been the only one kept inside his storage all this time, only to yelp in surprise when it snapped at his food, realizing it clearly wasn't a herbivore. Watching the horse quietly, he admitted he'd have been in real trouble without it around, adding that it was the first friend he'd made since arriving in this world. He held up the subordination proof and asked gently if it would allow him to place it on. The horse's coat gleamed black as obsidian, and Tuya smiled, saying that since they were doing this properly now, it deserved a name. He decided on Kokuyu, asking it to take good care of him from here on. Even after the naming, the horse kept nudging and mouthing at him affectionately, prompting him to tell it to stop. Nearby, a girl noticed the horse and murmured in surprise, recognizing it as a battle horse. She watched the two of them amused, remarking how strangely attached the horse was to him, and thinking to herself that this world really did have some odd people in it. At a charming inn run by beastmen, a lively girl delivered in a hot feast, noting it was already lunchtime. Deep in slumber, the summoned man sprawled across the bed, plainly worn out from his trip. Elsewhere, the fox-eared girl advanced outside, stretching and savoring the composed start to the day. After waking, he greeted a close-by beast, silently amazed at how soundly he had slept. Using in-game currency from his storage, he paid for a 10-day stay. While the beastman girl stepped out for errands, the youthful man chose to learn the value of his money. She prompted him to return early for dinner, where orc stew awaited yet again. At the market, he verified that his currency held real value, easing his worries about living expenses. His focus shifted from meal to equipment as he stumbled upon an armament shop in town. The man examined the collection, determined to upgrade to higher-tier gear fit for adventure. The blacksmith pointed out that a cleric might benefit more from a sorcery tool shop. Eager to explore, the youthful man lit up at the idea, wondering if it sold magic books. Following the directions, he reached at a peaceful building known as Twilight Hall. Upon entering, he was astonished to find a composed doll-like elf seated and watching him silently. Recognition flashed in her gaze as she smiled, claiming to remember him from a past encounter. Taken by surprise, he realized the youthful girl in front of him was actually the shop owner. The woman instantly defended her appearance, insisting she was an adult elf distant older than he assumed. After regaining focus, the explorer inquired for sorcery books, explaining his limited experience with spells. The elf cheerfully listed the prices, separating them by difficulty and coin type, with funds values clearer currently. He was advised to start with beginner books for everyday sorcery. Though hesitant about the price, the youthful man chose to purchase all 3 magic books at once. While arranging payment, he praised the elf for her remarkable handling of the shop, despite her youthful appearance. Astonished, she discovered he could use a storage ability, an uncommon and valuable skill in their world. Without hesitation, she disclosed she possessed the same talent. Proudly, she introduced herself as the Twilight Sage Nathalia, boasting an enormous storage capacity of 5,000 kilograms. Although impressed by her 5,000 kilograms capacity, the youthful man mentioned his own storage had no item limit. The elf teased him, calling herself amazing as he debated keeping his talent secret. With a comforting farewell, she prompted him to visit any time if he needed more help. The woman proposed to teach him sorcery step by step though, only in exchange for payment. That night, he started studying recovery spells from the beginner's sorcery book. Returning to the inn. While reading, strange symbols began swirling around him, and the spells seemed to imprint themselves into his memory. He understood he might previously be capable of casting advanced sorcery. With a swift chant, he released a mighty healing spell, causing sorcery to radiate from the building. Downstairs, the beastman girl spotted the light and challenged her parent about the abrupt glow. The innkeeper flexed his arm, astonished by an abrupt boost in vitality, feeling unexpectedly refreshed. As morning broke, Tuya descended the stairs, greeted by the lively beastman girl previously waiting below, prompting him to explain he'd gone straight to bed out of exhaustion. Wasting no time, she proposed to make breakfast, insisting he eat plenty to make up for the skipped feast. Enjoying the hearty orc stew, Tuya acknowledged it was delicious and worth the wait. Before eating, he gave thanks with a prayer-like gesture, drawing curious comments from his host. Tuya awkwardly clarified that his pre-meal gesture was merely a habit from his old world. He challenged whether he could ever return home or if this world was currently permanent. From what he discovered, this town existed in the game's universe, yet the name was unfamiliar to him. Looking at the twin suns, he questioned whether this was genuinely the same world or an entirely different one. Regardless, with his storage ability and a mighty XP-boosting ring, determined to grow stronger, Tuya tightened his grip on the ring and made a wordless vow. The man headed to the woodland south of Fendi Town, hoping to test the ring's experience-boosting effect. After leaving his steed with water made from livelihood sorcery, he readied to explore solitary blade in hand. He cautiously advanced, aware that reality sensed considerably more dangerous than the game. Despite his nerves, he shortly spotted a party of monsters and understood clash was inevitable. Realizing the goblins were his true foes, Tuya focused his thoughts and readied to strike. With swift precision, he launched a mighty attack, cutting down the first goblin in a single blow. Without hesitation, he charged the remaining party, slashing through them as terror flashed across their faces. Each movement sensed heavier than in the game this was real, and every injury left a mark as the dust settled. He marveled at his rapid growth 6 levels earned. After defeating a party of orcs with intense swordplay, Tuya resolved it was time to return to his steed. Before leaving, he employed his storage talent to neatly collect the fallen monsters for afterward use. Emerging from the woodland, scratched and exhausted, he was relieved to see Kokuyu waiting loyally. To his astonishment, the warhorse had taken down over 30 goblins solitary, standing proud among their remains. Returning to the inn, the beastman girl proposed to clean him up. Returning to the guild, Tuya dropped off numerous monster parts, surprising the receptionist with the enormous haul. He casually disclosed there were still more orcs in storage, drawing a shocked reaction. Owing guild member advised him to keep his storage talent a secret, as it was highly coveted. She added that exposure could lead to constant party invitations, something Tuya hoped to avoid. Shortly afterward, they entered the dismantling area, where others recognized Malua and greeted her warmly. Tuya introduced himself at the dismantling center and mentioned his materials were inside his storage. Impressed by his talent, The workers encouraged him to unload everything without holding back. The man accepted, beginning with 200 goblin ears, leaving them shocked by the volume. Next came 10 orcs. Afterward, wolves, dozens of them, causing growing panic. As the area packed with corpses, Tuya had to yell for them to stop, overwhelming even the professionals. Overwhelmed by the volume of materials, Dalla consented to process them afterward, relieved they wouldn't spoil in storage. Thanks to the goblin ears, Tuya was promoted to E rank, although he clarified it was a recent promotion. The guildmaster marveled at Tuya's performance, calling him a remarkable newcomer. One material assessment was scheduled for the next day, hinting at another potential rank up. Curious, Malua challenged whether he was really a cleric, surprised by all he had accomplished. Malua assumed Tuya must be a berserker due to his power, startling him into awkward agreement. The woman imagined a legendary fighter who surpasses human limits, an invincible force on the battlefield. Tuya acknowledged such a class was only a myth, especially since level 100 was considered to be the cap. Yet a theory surfaced: what if changing jobs grew possible once level 100 was reached? Tuya activated his status screen to investigate further. After reviewing his stats, Tuya noticed he had previously reached level 35, distant beyond his expectations. Inspired, he set his sights on becoming a berserker, determined to reach fresh heights in this world. The man thanked Kokuyu for staying by his side, knowing they'd face future challenges collectively. Energized, Tuya rushed back toward the inn with renewed purpose. But upon arriving, he was met with concerned faces and an unexpected apology. Tuya stayed wordless as he was inquired to leave the inn by morning without explanation. The party faced eviction from their inn due to an abrupt complaint. A girl clarified that Kokuyu, the summoned beast, was frightening the horses and causing worry. Closeby guests had even canceled their stays, overwhelmed by Kokuyu's terrifying presence. Seeking a solution, the protagonist inquired for another inn, but instead was proposed a cheap, larger property. They reached at the fresh place, but were cautioned. The owner was unusual, and a special condition awaited. The guild staff greeted Nathalia warmly, astonished to see her after some time. With skepticism, Nathalia challenged the tenant being delivered to her estate, plainly expecting trouble. When Tuya appeared, she instantly recognized him, shocked to see a recognizable face. After confirming his name, Nathalia proposed inspecting the estate firsthand to judge the circumstances. As they strolled through town, Kokuyu's towering form drew curious stares from startled onlookers. They arrived in an upscale district. Nathalia pointed out the mansion with a confident gesture. Tuya was shocked by the sheer size and grandeur of the estate before him. The man expressed disbelief at the luxurious offer, but Nathalia dismissed his worry about the rent. With a smirk, she hinted that staying there would depend entirely on his own capabilities. Once inside, she called out to someone, and a mysterious vapor-like form commenced to rise. Nathalia clarified that only those recognized by the entity could reside in the estate. The ethereal form solidified into Ferris, a dignified girl with flowing hair and composed presence. Though lovely, Ferris bore an emotionless expression, giving her the appearance of a lifelike doll. Clarification trailed: Ferris was a house entity, who guarded the estate and delivered fortune to its inhabitants. Despite being the owner, Nathalia acknowledged she couldn't stay, as Ferris never accepted her presence. Curious about the process, Tuya inquired how one could gain the entity's approval. After a wordless pause, Ferris shifted ahead. Her decision clear: Tuya was deemed worthy of the mansion. Astonished, Tuya claimed he hadn't done anything, while the guild girl expressed amazement at his luck. Nathalia watched silently, noting how even the spirit and Kokuyu seemed to trust him. Negotiations concluded with a favorable rent, and Tuya consented to the terms without hesitation. Tuya presented a slice of shortcake as a way to celebrate his fresh residence. The man introduced the dessert to the others, explaining it was a type of confection. Nathalia hesitantly took a bite, skeptical that such a sweet thing could be meal. Her uncertainty melted into delight as the flavor entirely captivated her. Amazed by the taste, both girls eagerly inquired for seconds, enchanted by the dessert's sweetness. Disappointment hit hard when Tuya disclosed there was no more cake to offer. With a grave face, Nathalia proposed exchanging the mansion for another piece of shortcake. The woman insisted it wasn't a bad deal, since she couldn't live there anyway. Tuya silently challenged her logic, but noticed no downside from his perspective. To satisfy her sweet craving, he presented a chocolate parfait, another dessert, with irresistible impact. Nathalia selfishly guarded her parfait, refusing to share even a bite with the guild girl. Disheartened but composed, the girl proposed to help Tuya with the sales contract. As they departed, Tuya contemplated on how surreal it was to trade a estate for dessert. Even Kokuyu appeared content, rolling happily on the ground after enjoying his own treat. At the Commerce Guild, paperwork was completed, finalizing Tuya's official ownership of the estate. Tuya discovered he still had to pay a hefty 2 million gil property tax. Startled, he understood the mansion's taxes were equivalent to its annual value. Nathalia acknowledged she'd been paying until currently but had gone into debt since no one could live there. The woman officially entrusted Ferris to Tuya, passing all responsibility to him as the fresh resident. Staring at the estate, Tuya couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just been cleverly tricked. Returning from town, Tuya complained that things would have been easier if Kokuyu could just return to storage. Surprisingly, Kokuyu actually vanished into storage, leaving Tuya shocked. It broke his assumption about living beings. Realization hit hard. The entire reason for acquiring the estate might have been unnecessary from the start. Still, keeping Kokuyu in storage forever wasn't realistic, so he delivered him back out. Stepping through the door, he stated his return, as Ferris silently emerged to greet him. Without hesitation, he entrusted himself to Ferris, hoping she would guide him through the estate. One faint grin crossed her face, subtle, yet sufficient to make him question if he imagined it. Legends remarked such homes remain untouched by time, preserved by the entity dwelling within. Though numerous desired the estate, Ferris had refused everyone until currently. Exploring deeper, he marveled at a magnificent bath, impressed by the home's hidden luxuries. Permission granted, he challenged whether the bath could be employed anytime. Ferris gave a silent nod. Relaxing in the water, he praised the daily luxury, feeling right at home. Thoughts wandered toward long-term plans, leveling up, organizing gear, and adapting to this fresh lifestyle. An abrupt presence startled him. Ferris remained wordless at the bath's edge, watching without expression. Startled and embarrassed, he swiftly inquired her to leave, not expecting the entity's visit. Even in the bath, she seemed to support him, silently leaving him flustered and unsure how to react. Fresh clothes had emerged by the basket. Realizing she delivered them, he sensed the need to thank her properly. Wearing the fresh outfit, he relaxed in the chair, grateful for her peaceful housework. Questions stirred within him about her acknowledgement, yet he couldn't bring himself to ask. As he drifted into rest, Ferris softly covered him, her face soft and content. Before heading out, he called out his goodbye, tone echoing from the front of the estate. Plans were clear. He'd be taking on guild requests and camping in the woodland for 3 days. Noticing her worried expression, he attempted to reassure her, wearing a smile. Confidence packed his tone as he vowed he'd return safely. Despite how he might appear, reaching out instinctively, he swiftly tugged back, remembering humans couldn't touch spirits like Ferris. In the western woods, Tuya engaged a horde of orcs, fulfilling a guild appeal with swift strikes. Amid the aftermath, he weighed staying longer, his power growing steadily, thanks to the sorcery ring. Returning to the mansion, Ferris waited in silence, sitting alone as raindrops started to fall. Gazing out the window, she gazed unsettled, unsure why an unfamiliar heaviness lingered. Elsewhere, Tuya resumed hunting, pushing his limits while unknowingly delaying his return further. During clash, Tuya spotted his blade dulling with blood, yet storing it restored its sharpness instantly. Grateful for his enchanted ring, he laughed as his XP multiplied with every struggle. Reaching level 100 since surreal, his status screen confirmed it, unlocking the way to job change. Excited, he selected yes, hoping to shift from cleric to fighter. Instead, only spellcaster and high cleric emerged, dashing his combat dreams in an instant. Kokuyu's teasing snout lightened the mood, pushing Tuya to continue the hunt despite his frustration. Rain pouring down, he resolved to struggle on his job, maybe spellcaster, but a blade still suited him. Determined, he set his fresh goal: reach level 100 as a spellcaster and unlock further potential. At long last, he returned home, exhausted yet satisfied with his progress. Calling out to Ferris, he apologized for the delay, hoping she had waited patiently. Ferris eventually spoke, her tone trembling as she confessed how profoundly worried she had been. Shocked by the revelation, Tuya marveled at her words, startled she could even talk. Gratitude welled up in him as he thanked her for protecting the estate during his absence. Elsewhere, word circulated that a promising fresh explorer had taken up residence in town. At the guild, sub-guild master Ebran expressed keen interest in meeting Tuya face-to-face. Tuya is astonished to find his guild rank has jumped to C despite just recently ranking up. Meets Ebrand, the sub-guild master, who claims responsibility for the abrupt promotion. Ebrand greets the guild members with confidence, gaining their focus and respect. The man rallies everyone to take on more requests to earn funds and boost morale. Afterward, Tuya is called aside by Ebrand, while others watch in confusion and amusement. At the dismantling facility, workers panic upon seeing Tuya approaching the building. The staff are overwhelmed by the enormous pile of monster corpses he brings in, begging him to leave. While Ebrand praises his C-rank status, Tuya hides the fact he has still more material stored. They walk collectively as Ebrand hints at a task appeal only Tuya can handle. The task merchant escort is swiftly refused by Tuya without hesitation. Tuya rejects the escort task, knowing it would become a hassle to deal with. The man adds that leaving Ferris solitary is not an option while Ebrand hears him out. Milia rushes in, handing over Tuya's updated guild card with slight worry. The card displays his class as cleric, but he knows he's currently a spellcaster. Since the cards are mysterious artifacts, only limited changes can be manually made. Tuya feels relieved knowing no one can detect his secret job change on the guild card. Ebrand compares his abnormal growth to a veteran who took decades to reach a lower level. Reflecting on the world's limitations, Tuya realizes his rapid progress came from hidden advantages. Ebrand hints that such uncommon ability might attract attention from the royal palace itself. However, Milia reminds him that royalty would take away his freedom as an explorer. Tuya stands frozen at the entrance of a hall, shocked by the number of citizens waiting inside. Ebrand, observing his face, concludes that Tuya plainly has no interest in government service. The man warns Milia to keep the matter secret and decides to drop the issue altogether. Shifting topics, Ebrand hands over a sorcery stone and brings up Tuya's investigative goal. One fresh opportunity arises as someone offers support in his search for answers. Directed into the guild's prize material room, he steps into a place packed with wisdom from close-by nations. Shelves of uncommon tomes surround him, but access comes with a price he didn't expect. An exception is proposed: free use of the chamber, but only if the appeal is accepted. Considering the offer, he casually suggests taking on another escort task. Permission is granted with one rule: nothing may be taken out of the chamber. Ebrand sets the date 10 days and reminds everyone not to be late. Excited, Milia hurries off to handle the paperwork as he lets out a little sigh. The material room's fee surprises him: just 1 copper coin, cheaper than expected. Milia reveals the books are mostly unused manuscripts and urges him not to give up adventuring. From beyond the building, he realizes he's been entirely tricked by the circumstances. Pleased with how things turned out, he strolls away from the guild, only to be ambushed by a recognizable face. Nathalia fidgets nervously, struggling to explain why she'd been waiting by the gate. Turns out, she'd been craving more of the sweets she once tasted, currently entirely out of stock. As he tries to change the topic, she grows impatient, demanding his focus. Back home, Ferris welcomes him warmly, astonished by his unusually early return. Disbelief spreads across his face upon realizing Ferris is abruptly speaking aloud. Even Nathalia seems clueless, amazed to witness a house entity talk for the first time. Before any answers come, she casually waves goodbye, claiming there's still much she doesn't understand. Instead of sweets, she proposes a trade: precious books in exchange for her favorite treat. Curiosity sparks as he asks if the sorcery is as mighty as the games. After a brief pause, he agrees the book trade for a sweet didn't sound like a bad deal. As dinner is suggested, excitement bubbles up, and she swiftly accepts the invitation. One sizzling mixed grill is served, promising to fill both stomach and entity. The woman takes a cautious bite, astonished by the unusual but flavorful texture. Delight floods her face: softness, taste, and warmth, unlike anything she's eaten before. Ferris explains that as a house entity, nourishment comes from absorbing magical energy in the environment. Strangely, she finds sorcery especially delicious when Tuya is close by, making her feel full. Everything feels fresh to her unfamiliar dishes, the taste of manta, and a talking entity in the chamber. As dinner continues, she wonders if meeting this mysterious man has shifted her fate. With cake in hand and a full belly, she leaves satisfied, though Ferris's mystery remains unsolved. Nathalia leaves wearing a smile, satisfied by sweets, and subtly hinting for more in the future. Left solitary, he turns his focus to the book she traded one for research, one of uncommon grade. Flipping through the contents, he realizes space transfer sorcery isn't just a theory, it's real. Clarity dawns as he finds the text surprisingly simple to grasp, authored by none other than Nathalia. Not from the wisdom, but from her being the genius behind it all. While staring out at the peaceful night, he starts to wonder if Nathalia might be more remarkable than he considered. Daily visits to the material room uncover fresh insights, including a peculiar map that leaves him speechless. Familiar kingdoms from his elderly games surprisingly exist in this world, deepening the mystery. Some nations, however, are entirely fresh, including the one he is currently living in. Gaze still scanning the map, he casually brings up the name of Fendiat. The archive table, a bold explorer leans in close, pointing out the escort route with confidence. The woman introduces herself as Lumina, the leader of the assignment he's about to join. Despite a lingering hangover, she's previously up and headed to a briefing with Ebrand. Before walking off, she grins and tells him she's expecting good things from the newbie. Puzzled, he compares the map's distance to her vague, playful response about the expedition forward. The man gazes at the distant castle, wondering if it holds a clue to returning home. Though tempted by the idea, part of him hesitates this world has become meaningful too. On the day of departure, Ferris rushes from the residence, breaking her silence at last. Her comfort is clear. She's glad to see him before the expedition begins. With a soft tone, she asks him to return shortly and care for their home. Ferris fights back tears, silently wishing Tuya a safe return and hoping he'd stay instead. At the gathering point, Lumina outlines their task guarding a merchant's goods between towns. Threat looms on the route forward, with sightings of mighty monsters keeping everyone alert. Among the merchants, someone recognizes Tuya from a past encounter and praises his accomplishments. As the party prepares to depart, Lumina steps onward with bold energy, ready to lead. The escort party sets out, carts and horses rolling under a clear sky. One companion mocks Tuya's abilities, doubting his rank and calling him frail. The others back the claim, insisting they handle all real combat during missions. Annoyed, Tuya silently recalls that he's handled every struggle solitary without relying on anyone. Tuya entered a merchant escort headed toward the western town of Dumbler. While the others enjoyed the composed ride, one member expressed frustration, wishing for Threat to prove himself. He increased irritated, thinking Tuya's presence would prevent him from showing his power. Fearing being overshadowed, one female fighter reassured Tuya, explaining how some adventurers often belittled priests. The woman clarified that since priests aided from the rear, numerous didn't value their worth until it was too late. When Threat hit, the cleric was left defenseless, compelled to flee as monstrous foes advanced. Within the wagon, the party reflected on the strength of close bonds and the fear of losing trusted allies. Riding silently, Tuya pondered the importance of party unity and the peace it delivered. A soft grin crossed his face as he acknowledged that joining a party wasn't so bad. He resolved it was a good place to rest and prepare for what lay forward. Tuya activated a spell he had developed from a theoretical formula in a sorcery research book. The man dispersed his magical energy to form a detection field that covered the surrounding area. Through this magical web, he identified 3 woods boars positioned 200 meters away. Raising his hand, he launched an attack using an ability earned from his fresh spellcaster class. The aircutter spell hit its targets with precision, scattering the beasts in a burst of force. After finishing his task, Tuya returned to the party, offering a casual apology to Lumina for the delay. While the party traveled, Lumina joked about their pace, expressing her wish to return home swiftly. At camp, complaints about repetitive dried meat surfaced as they settled under the night sky. One member mocked Tuya, accusing him of freeloading since he delivered no meal. Tuya ignored the insult and steadily confirmed their resting spot, ready to continue without conflict. Tuya astonished everyone by pulling out a full feast from his storage, ready to serve. The meal stayed hot, causing a stir among the party as they gathered in curiosity. Lumina observed longingly, comparing her dry rations to Tuya's freshly made dish. Wearing a smile, Tuya offered to share, inviting everyone to enjoy what he'd prepared. Around the campfire, they savored the delicious meal, wishing for alcohol to complete the feast. While the party enjoyed Tuya's cooking, Dai sat apart, stubbornly rejecting the offer despite the praise. He grumbled to himself, doubting Tuya's merits. Although he silently acknowledged the youthful man's rare skill and rank, the party eventually reached Dumbler town safely, relieved after a long trip without incident. Lumina contemplated on the peaceful trip, wondering if she'd ever witnessed Tuya's true power. That night, the party celebrated their safe arrival with meal, drinks, and lively toasts. As the drinking proceeded, Lumina called out to Tuya, challenging him to join in with full entity. Tuya took a sip but found the local ale too lukewarm to his liking. The man smiled, deciding to enhance it with a bit of sorcery to chill the drink. When inquired, he casually proposed the improved beverage to Lumina, inviting her to try. Astonished by the result, she took a sip and praised its refreshing, chilly taste. Tuya proposed to chill Lumina's drink, surprising her with the refreshing taste. The woman encouraged Dai to try it next. Cornered by Lumina's enthusiasm, Dai reluctantly accepted the mug and took a sip. His face shifted in disbelief as he acknowledged it tasted amazing, asking Tuya for another. He smiled softly, reminding them that even a cleric could be precious in numerous ways. Abruptly, Lumina leaned in, asking Tuya for a grave conversation, catching him entirely off guard. Lumina leaned in close and abruptly inquired Tuya to join her on future journeys. Before he could respond, she tugged him down playfully, demanding chilled ale whenever she required it. The next morning, Tuya danced out solitary, realizing the others were still sleeping off their drinks. He weighed his options and chose to visit the local guild for potential work. As he strolled through the bustling streets, he noted that while Dumbler lacked specialties, its market was thriving. Tuya spotted the settlement's guild building, just as a little hand tugged on his cloak. A youthful boy challenged whether he could use healing magic not for himself, but for someone else. Holding out 3 copper coins, the child begged Tuya to heal his sick sister Saya. Despite asking numerous citizens, he was turned away because the funds wasn't sufficient. Before Tuya could reply, a harsh tone interrupted, scolding the boy for loitering close by. One party of drunk, arrogant men mocked the boy, calling him a stray from the slums. The group ridiculed his education and claimed no explorer would ever help someone with so little funds. One man attempted to pull Tuya away, warning him he'd gain nothing from helping. With rising fury, Tuya shoved the man aside and stood up for the boy without hesitation. Just as tensions escalated, a guild staff member emerged, demanding to know what was going on. The thugs, grumbling at the interruption, retreated under the guild's warning, swearing they'd remember the incident, while Tuya formally introduced himself to the youthful boy Leol. Wearing a smile, Tuya accepted the commission and asked Leol for all his savings in return. Leol directed him through the poorer side of town, where numerous struggled in the shadows of prosperity. Upon arriving at the orphanage, joyful children welcomed Leol home, eager to hear about his efforts. Leol proudly introduced Tuya to the other children, announcing he could use healing sorcery. One little girl holding a stuffed animal inquired shyly if he could heal, and Tuya assured her he could. When inquired about the adults, the children clarified Saya had been doing everything on her own. Inside, Tuya found Saya feverish and bedridden from overwork and exhaustion. He was hit by how she, despite being his age, transported such a heavy responsibility solitary. The children clarified that Saya had been sick for a week, and her condition hadn't improved. Tuya spotted her dangerously high fever, while the kids held on to optimism that she'd recover shortly. Despite his uncertainty as a cleric, he reassured them he'd do his best to help. Without hesitation, he cast multiple healing spells, pouring his sorcery into her frail body. Moments afterward, Saya awoke, puzzled but alert, her power already beginning to return. Tuya served a comforting feast to the children, encouraging them to eat as much as they liked. Room packed with smiles as he cheerfully handed out meal. Just as Saya entered, the children hurried to her side, excitedly telling her Tuya had restored her with sorcery. Embarrassed, Saya hurried off to change, afterward returned gratefully, thanking Tuya for both healing and meal. Tuya steadily stated he'd previously been paid, while the kids stayed amazed by his summoned pot. The man disclosed he had no household, prompting Saya to express deep gratitude for his kindness. One simple offer of soup welcomed another child, showing the warmth spreading through the home. Between bites, Saya acknowledged she currently managed everything solitary after losing her parent the year before. Outside, children played orphans of war, victims of a past invasion that scarred the settlement. Resolute and sincere, Saya proclaimed she would protect every child left in her care. Fury stirred in silence. The destruction caused by the Generate Kingdom declined to go unanswered. Over a peaceful feast, Tuya prompted Saya not to push herself too hard despite her intentions. He softly encouraged her to depend on those surrounding her. Just as they depended on her, tears welled up as warmth packed her heart. Misunderstandings swiftly turned into laughter among the children. Startled and embarrassed, both advanced back, faces red, as the moment spiraled into lighthearted chaos. Under the evening sky, the youthful man prepared to leave, prompting surprise and teasing from those surrounding him. He cheerfully stated his departure and left a sizable pot of soup behind, ensuring everyone would be cared for in his absence. The townsfolk observed in awe, impressed by his thoughtful gesture and abilities. Before he could walk away, they urged him to return, calling out to him warmly. Assembled collectively, they smiled and waved, promising to welcome him back any time. While pondering the war and his own role, the youthful man was approached by a persistent drunk offering distractions. Before he could respond, the elderly man was struck by an arrow, collapsing in front of him. A group of armed men appeared, shouting with hostility, plainly targeting the youthful man with violent intent. An elderly man writhed on the ground, groaning in pain as a party of youthful men laughed close by. Noticing a newcomer, they turned their focus toward him, commenting on his high-grade equipment and assuming he transported wealth. Kneeling beside the injured man, the cloaked traveler surveyed the rundown alley. With composed resolve, he activated a healing spell. Ignoring warnings yelled from the shadows, the stranger urged him to escape before trouble returned. 2 men mocked the youthful cleric, assuming he was the type to flee from threat. One of them seized his collar, threatening to harm the girl he'd been seen with earlier. Instead of reacting with terror, the cleric steadily challenged them, reminding them he was still an explorer. Drawing an armament from storage, he swiftly overpowered his foes with decisive strikes. With rising resolve, he understood leaving them unchecked would only put Saya at greater risk. The 2 men mocked him anew, believing a sorcery user couldn't be a real hazard in close combat. Without hesitation, the cleric charged onward, shouting with intense determination. Every strike was precise, executed just as he had imagined doing within the game world. As one foe fell, the second hurried in with the armament, only to freeze as the cleric steadily turned to face him. In one sweeping motion, he dispatched the attacker flying, ending the clash without mercy. One of the bystanders observed with disbelief. How could a cleric wield both sword and martial skill so effortlessly? Panic set in among the foes, as one labeled the cleric a monster and attempted to retreat. The elder man moved ahead to block their escape despite their insults and threats. Fueled by rage, the attacker raised his blade, ready to strike the elderly man. Before the blow could land, his armament shattered mid-swing, halted by unseen power and firm warning. The youthful cleric proclaimed his intent to struggle without restraint, facing his fallen foes. Guards arrived soon after, taking the criminals into custody. As he reflected on how satisfying the confrontation had been, one guild member hesitated, unsure if they had sufficient evidence to act decisively. With the elderly man as a witness, they now had what they had to press charges. Grateful yet humble, the cleric apologized for being involved in another town's affairs and proposed his help. After hearing about a girl named Saya who rushed an orphanage in the slums, inside her room, Saya stretched after finishing her writing, unaware of the conversation about her. The woman smiled softly, recalling her appeal for someone to help care for the children. The guild consented to take responsibility for the orphanage, touched by Tuya's worry for the area's safety. Tuya was prompted that even in dark places, good citizens could still be found. With a sense of comfort, Tuya expressed how glad he was that Saya and the children would be safe. Under the moonlight, Tuya made a mental note to pick up souvenirs for Nathalia. Back in town, news circulated that he wouldn't return for a while. One girl panicked, realizing she'd miss out on his cooking for 2 more days. Closeby, some men curiously murmured about the little, energetic girl stirring up the inn. Nathalia, an elf who managed the sorcery tool shop and called herself a sage, stood with peaceful pride behind the counter. When a guild staff member called out to her, Nathalia reacted with a mix of astonishment and curiosity. The girl had come with a question requesting a private talk. Over tea, she disclosed her fresh role as Tuya's personal receptionist. Puzzled, Nathalia challenged whether Tuya's recognition by a house entity was genuinely unusual. Nathalia casually dismissed the question, stating that the resident's entity's decisions weren't hers to explain. As the conversation continued, she disclosed that some people are born profoundly connected to spirits, distant from prejudice, where her magical talents obtained her high status. After years of service, she chose to resign and travel, hoping to open a shop and enjoy life. Beyond that, she dreamed of reaching the legendary rank of Sage of Reason, spoken of in ancient elven texts. The king encouraged Nathalia in her pursuit of becoming a true sage, confident in her abilities. The man prompted her to visit Charlotte before leaving, noting the girl's fondness for her. Charlotte, the king's daughter, had been born with an uncommon gift tied to the entity world. The woman possessed the unique talent to be loved by spirits, drawing them naturally to her presence. While playing among the glowing fairies, Charlotte gazed up, astonished by Nathalia's peaceful arrival. Charlotte joyfully greeted Nathalia, calling her Obasan, while Nathalia insisted she was more like an older sister. Despite spending decades within the castle, Nathalia playfully defended her title, leaving Charlotte amused. As Nathalia readied to leave, she joked about returning only when Charlotte grew a bride. The woman prompted the girl of her royal responsibilities, stressing how crucial she was to the nation's future, promising that one day she'd grow formidable sufficient to wield entity sorcery herself. A youthful girl came running, announcing she had eventually found Charlotte. The girl, Arthuria, insisted Charlotte return at once, since her music instructor was fuming. Nathalia chuckled, noting how tough it must be for Arthuria to act as caretaker at such a youthful age. A swift correction trailed Charlotte wasn't even 5 years elderly yet, despite her maturity. Afterward came the astonishment. Arthuria revealed people had been calling Nathalia the Lowly Sage, greatly to her shock. Fired up by the nickname Lowly Sage, Nathalia vowed to teach the culprits a lesson they'd remember. Shortly afterward, she bid farewell to Charlotte and Arthuria. Reflecting on her past, Nathalia mused about the estate she'd acquired 10 years ago without the entity's blessing. The woman had wished to bond with its entity, but Ferris never let her live inside. Over tea, she acknowledged the world still held numerous mysteries, including how to gain a house entity's trust. As the caravan traveled onward, Nathalia pondered whether the way to becoming a sage genuinely existed. The woman contemplated on Tuya, believing that if anyone could reach that way, it would be him. Collectively with companions, Tuya set up camp, hoping for a peaceful return trip. Won admired his clash steed, unaware it had been secretly stored in his inventory all along. Elsewhere, another traveler accused Tuya of showing off, annoyed that a cleric attracted so much attention. Day, now warmed by Tuya's chilled ale, started to acknowledge him wearing a smile. The party's attitude shifted, praising Tuya's soup and growing more welcoming toward him. As he shifted through the camp, an abrupt nudge from his steed made him alert. Activating a search spell, Tuya spotted a sizable group of monsters approaching from the woodland. Panic trailed as he hurried to warn Lumina and the others about the incoming hazard. Lumina sensed an ominous sound echoing through the woodland, alerting her instincts. Moments afterward, a horde of orcs emerged from the shadows, their weapons raised and expressions packed with aggression. The peaceful caravan was thrown into chaos as distant rumblings signaled an approaching hazard. Disbelief circulated across the faces of the escorts when enormous feet came into view. Charging from the woodland edge, a wave of orcs stormed into sight, weapons raised and gaze wild. Standing their ground, the defenders attempted to assess the scale of the opposition force closing in. Gaze narrowed. The red-haired fighter made a rough count there. Had to be around 30 of them. Tuya was assigned to support from the rear as the party braced for confrontation. Instead of charging, the orcs hesitated. Their focus was fixed on a mighty warhorse, its presence alone holding them back. Comfort turned to alarm when someone spotted an unusual figure among the opposition ranks. An imposing orc general moved ahead, plainly of a higher species and wielding authority. Despite their brute nature, higher species displayed intelligence. The party swiftly realized how overwhelming the orc's strength was. Akaina broke down under pressure, trembling in panic. The woman's allies tried desperately to compose her before the chaos spiraled further, determined to protect them. Their leader inquired Tuya to escape with the others if things turned grim. Memories of their hometown and shared dreams gave him power to face the coming clash. The man declined to abandon his comrades, even if it meant sacrificing himself for their survival. Grief weighed heavy on the party. The considered of losing Dai crushed their spirits, drawing out tears and regret. The team rallied collectively. With renewed fire, they stood firm as the grassland fangs, refusing to fall. The group's victory left witnesses in awe. Even B-rank warriors struggled against orcs in those numbers. Uncertainty was swiftly dismissed. With Kokuyu by his side, Tuya wasn't solitary in clash. With trust in their bond, they advanced onward with renewed determination. The opposition's commander, a towering orc general, emerged amidst his troops, tightening the pressure on the defenders. Dai's trust weighed on her, fueling her determination to struggle. With an intense cry, the orcs charged. The woman rallied her allies, urging them to resist with everything they had. One flash of steel split the air. The general's head flew an instant. Decisive strike had landed. Tuya, blade in motion, surged onward. The man's unexpected attack shocked even his allies. The man unleashed a barrage of attacks, cutting through the orcs before conjuring flames that exploded on impact. With relentless force, he launched into the fray. Blades, fists, and hooves cleared foes in every direction. His allies observed with disbelief, overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity of his assault. To them, it appeared like witnessing a legend reborn, something beyond human. Smiling casually among fallen foes, Tuya stood tall. The man was a berserker in every sense. Everyone stood in silence, shocked by what they'd just witnessed. The fighter woman, still gripping her sword, attempted to process it. Without hesitation, she gave the command Tuya would lead them onward. Doubts lingered, but trust prevailed. Amid fallen orcs, the party cheered their survival. Comfort and disbelief mixed in their tones. Amazed by Tuya's combat skills, they praised both his swordplay and sorcery. With a soft smile, he credited his power to the bond he shared with Kokuyu. Dai expressed heartfelt gratitude, relieved that none of his comrades had to die. The team's unity had been preserved. Tuya humbly deflected the praise, reminding them that everyone had contributed to the clash. Looking over the battlefield, the party understood the fallen monsters could bring in significant rewards. While some discussed proof for subjugation, Tuya reassured them with a lively solution. With a sweep of his hand, he activated his storage sorcery, effortlessly gathering the remains. The party stared with disbelief as Tuya's storage magic activated, drawing gasps and confusion. In an instant, the battlefield cleared, leaving everyone speechless at the sight of disappearing monster remains. Shortly afterward, the caravan rolled through the gates of Fendi. Cheers broke out. Everyone had made it back safely. Citizens welcomed them warmly. Tuya was greeted with admiration and gratitudes, smiling brightly. A guild girl handed him a medal. He had been promoted to B rank. Tuya was shocked to learn that completing the escort task had obtained him a promotion to B rank. The decision had come swiftly, thanks to Ibran's insistence on recognizing his potential. Feeling guilty, Dai shifted forward to apologize for his earlier harsh words. He responded with kindness, brushing it off with a lively grin. In that moment, they stood united, equal adventurers bound by friendship and shared triumph. The guild proposed a celebration, suggesting stew and drinks to mark their successful task and Tuya's promotion. Encircled by smiling faces, Dai silently acknowledged this feeling of camaraderie wasn't so bad after all. After parting ways,
Tuya returned home, calling out to someone dear as he advanced through the magnificent estate. Ferris welcomed him with tears and warmth, revealing how lonely she had been. Tuya's heart swelled. This homecoming, and Ferris waiting, was all he ever desired. Softly approached Ferris, sensing something unspoken in her face. The group remarked spirits and humans couldn't touch, but he reached out, drawn by instinct and emotion. To his astonishment, her hand met his without resistance. One soft warmth circulated through his skin. With a tender grin, Ferris held his hand, gaze packed with affection. Tuya sensed something awaken, a deep, mysterious energy that connected their hearts beyond words. Ferris smiled softly as her form started to fade, softly telling Tuya that her power had reached its limit for the day. Elsewhere, Kokuyu rolled with delight in the garden, thrilled from merely being touched by his master. Lumina reported to Ebrand and was inquired about Tuya's condition. The woman clarified their perilous encounter with an orc general and how grim it could have been. With a sip of tea, she credited Tuya and his mighty steed for saving everyone. Reflection gazed back from the bowl. Her power, remarkable, still couldn't match his. Lips curled into a grin. Even at the risk of death, she longed to cross blades with him. And other reports surfaced, relayed from traveling merchants. Urgency packed the chamber. Distant beyond, clash lines shifted. The war between two great nations took an unexpected turn. Boots pounded against the earth. Forces on the move currently raced toward an uncertain future. Ownhorn Girl spotted someone through the rain-soaked trees and rushed onward with urgency. The princess smiled softly, trying to ease her companion's terror. Determination packed the night air. The group's trip couldn't end here. Both girls understood their destination was critical. The group had to find the sage no matter the cost. Tuya is invited to join a guild party, but he steadily declines the offer. Afterward, the party gathers in a tavern after completing a task. Tuya appears uninterested, focused on the chilled ale. An abrupt report reveals a war has broken out between two nations, with a hero involved on the realm side. The man recognizes the name and recalls a past encounter with that champion. The war escalates as both armies clash, locked in a long stalemate. Destruction spreads across Lunnet territory as the mysterious champion devastates multiple towns with overwhelming force. Concerns grow that the neutral kingdom of Sarandir might be dragged into the escalating conflict if the circumstances shifts. One youthful man expresses confidence, trusting Lunnet's elite knight commander to change the tide. However, terror rises when he reveals the realm's plan to enslave beastmen. The cat-eared girl trembles, realizing her citizens' fate if Jenneret wins. Despite the war looming over her kingdom, the princess had smiled with fragile optimism. One child curiously pondered who might be stronger, Tuya or the champion from the battlefield. His companions praised him, surprised by his power, though wary of the opposition ahead. Solitary, Tuya contemplated bitterly, discarded by society, merely for lacking a hero's title. Back home, a concerned tone greeted him, warning against drowning his pain in alcohol. Tuya apologized, and Ferris kindly forgave him, her communication growing more expressive each day. The woman casually mentioned Nathalia's visit while Tuya sighed in exasperation over her antics. Ever since the escort task finished, Ferris started following him around the estate, even toward the bath. The woman insisted on sleeping beside him, despite his embarrassment over her intrusions. An unusual barrier stayed. Tuya couldn't bring himself to touch her anymore, and neither recognized why. While soaking in the bath, Tuya contemplated on his abrupt arrival near the settlement. The man recalled the numerous citizens he'd encountered since his unexpected arrival in this peaceful place. Despite thoughts of returning home, he weighed staying, drawn by the ease of life here. Ferris accidentally intruded anew, flustering him as she stayed wordless in the doorway. Days afterward, her peaceful apology echoed with sincere regret. Tuya reached at the commission of Ebrand, uncertain why he had been summoned so urgently. Inside, he found Ebrand carving a wooden orc while explaining the need for immediate help. Milia briefed him on a remote village in the northern woods that had gone wordless. Wone C, ranked party dispatched earlier, also hadn't returned, raising concerns about the area, with monsters growing bolder. Tuya was inquired to investigate the unsettling developments. After some convincing, Tuya consented to the commission, vowed smooth travel and rewards. Excited, he hinted at testing something fresh once the assignment finished, while Milia worried about complaints. Ebrand enthusiastically proposed his wooden orc carving, but Tuya steadily declined it. Elsewhere, deep in the northern woods, two exhausted adventurers struggled to fend off an unseen hazard. One of them collapsed, close fallen orcs, barely responding as his companion hurried to his aid. The injured fighter smiled through the pain, insisting that protecting Char was his duty. As she carried him, Char encouraged him softly, believing they would escape the woodland soon. Despite exhaustion, she pressed on, determined not to falter as an empress. Distant away, the king of the empire despaired as news of Jenneret's abrupt invasion reached. The man's daughter delivered grim reports, defeat after defeat, each more devastating than the last. A proud fighter shifted ahead, requesting permission to send the elite Garrett Knights into battle. The citizens' hopes rose as they rallied behind him, placing their trust in his power. Before leaving, he comforted his daughter, praising how distant she had come. Citizens cheered as the renowned knights marched out, confident in a swift victory. But heartbreak trailed news reached that her parent had fallen in clash. Foe's advance was swift, cutting off routes as news of Garrett's death shook the court. The king ordered his daughter and Charlotte to flee to Sarandir, despite their protests. Resistance emerged as Nathalia, the sage, ready to struggle, refusing to abandon the empire with tears in their gazes. The girls entrusted their hopes to Nathalia's power. The king, burdened by loss, prayed her power could still change their fate. Only Arthuria and her companion fled alive, shielded by knights who laid down their lives. In the woodland, relief washed over her when Ar opened her gaze and stirred. Resources rushed, low guilt settled in as they shared their last drops of water. Uncertainty lingered as they challenged whether Nathalia could still be reached, in distant Sarandir memories of shared laughter with her softened the moment. Offering brief comfort amid uncertainty, fingers intertwined, they reaffirmed their trust, remembering past scoldings with bittersweet smiles. Kneeling collectively in prayer, they set their hopes in the goddess Thurteria's guidance. Tears fell as one clung to the other, mourning the fallen who bought them time. Optimism surged anew. Giving up wasn't an option, not while breath stayed in their bodies. Smoke in the distance disclosed salvation. A close-by village delivered them renewed power and relief. Comfort turned to worry as they entered the village, finding no citizens in sight. From the shadows, hulking silhouettes emerged, an immediate warning to back away. To their horror, orcs disclosed themselves within the hut, snarling and armed. Realization hit: what once was a human settlement currently belonged to monsters. With no time to plan, both girls fled as the orcs charged onward, panic rising. Tears welled as a desperate cry was cast into the heavens, pleading for divine mercy. Terror overtook them both as orcs shut in with ruthless intent. The woman's tone cracked as she begged for help from anyone, anywhere, hoping for a miracle. Abruptly, a figure descended like lightning, slicing through the chaos. Blades danced, sending orcs flying, as optimism returned in a single devastating strike. Two girls observed in awe as their mysterious savior reached, sensing something beyond monstrous presence. Cautiously, he investigated close-by remains, wondering if they belonged to the missing investigation party. With blade drawn, he urged them to stay back while preparing for the next assault. Solitary, he faced the remaining orcs, vowing to finish the confrontation himself, puzzled but hopeful. The girls challenged his identity as he steadily analyzed the hazard. The man summoned wind sorcery into his left hand, swirling energy forming at his side. Fire erupted from his right, combining both elements into a single unified spell. The girls stood shocked, witnessing sorcery unlike anything they'd seen before. With force, he unleashed the combined power, engulfing foes in a blazing firestorm. One violent surge of sorcery spiraled through the battlefield, tearing into the boar horde with overwhelming force. Smoke rose from the charred ground while the vanquished monsters lay scattered around the cloaked figure who shifted ahead. Satisfied, he evaluated his first attempt at combining wind and fire spells. Before he could speak further, the girls urgently pointed behind him, alarm spreading across their faces. The man turned sharply and found himself staring down a towering, armored ogre. With unwavering confidence, the youthful man stepped aside as his battle companion, a towering horse, launched a monstrous foe skyward. Closeby, the girls observed in awe, shocked by the creature's power and the calm demeanor of their rescuer. The man challenged their presence in the abandoned village, prompting them to explain their travel and abrupt arrival. Introductions trailed, with Charlotte cheerfully naming herself and her companion. Arthuria, shy and peaceful, hesitated as her nickname sparked mild astonishment. Embarrassed and breathless, gazed up with wide eyes and questioned whether he already had a wife. Before he could answer, she blurted out an offer to become one, startling everyone surrounding her. Realizing what she had remarked, she swiftly apologized, overwhelmed by embarrassment and emotion. Her companion clarified that Arthuria's tribe instinctively sought mighty mates, often without thinking. Tuya introduced himself, amused by her impulsiveness and puzzled by her bold nature. Claiming to be an explorer, Charlotte mentioned her connection to Fendi with urgency in her tone. Recognition lit up his gaze upon hearing the name, astonished it belonged to a region in Sarandir. Surroundings packed with wreckage, they pleaded for a chance to travel collectively towards safer ground. Reaching Sage Nathalia grew their shared task, driven by purpose and desperation. Curiosity stirred as he questioned whether they genuinely knew the eccentric sage firsthand. Excitement broke out when they understood Nathalia was someone they previously understood quite well. While exploring close-by huts, appeal came from inside. Someone required help, Wrapped bodies were identified through guild cards, handed over without hesitation to assist identification. Onin's swift spell compressed the remains for safe transport, impressing the observers close by. Honored by the gesture, they contemplated on how uncommon it was for fallen adventurers to return home. Months into his trip, the weight of loss had become a recognizable burden. Before continuing, he inquired the others to wait as they discussed plans for the crowded town forward. Wandering toward a tree, something eventually caught his focus, exactly what he had been looking for. Unique AI icon emerged, hinting at a wagon feature he hadn't employed before. Disbelief packed their faces as the summoned vehicle took form before their gazes. Wone's brilliant wagon emerged, its ornate design drawing gasps of admiration. Its grandeur surpassed expectations, especially with a mighty clash steed pulling it. Not even royal escorts were granted such luxury, leaving the girls astonished. Suspicions stirred as they murmured about Char's noble aura and curious background. Instead of explain himself, he smiled it off, deciding not to invite unnecessary complications. Sparkling lights reflected off the wagon's polished surface, leaving the girls with disbelief. Even nobles lacked access to such splendor, making its presence all the more shocking. Wone nod and a simple, "Let's go," marked the start of their trip. Smooth movement and silence astonished them. Technology this advanced didn't belong in their world. Despite his youth, his composure during past battles proceeded to earn their admiration. Despite his youthful appearance, he disclosed his true age with peaceful honesty. Confusion sparked debate. Was he a fighter, spellcaster, or someone entirely different? Hints about being a cleric only deepened the mystery, leading them to assume he was Nathalia's disciple. Rumors described Nathalia as a spellcaster striving towards sagehood through relentless research and wisdom. Understanding dawned. Her immense book of magical theory was born from that very pursuit. Their excitement increased once they understood the source of his mighty, unfamiliar sorcery. He stayed wordless about his true role, relieved no one pushed further. Elsewhere, deep in a cave, a berserker in training contemplated on his own progress, aiming for power. One intense clash finished swiftly. One decisive blow felled the raging foe. Exhaustion trailed. 1 week of non-stop combat left bodies behind, and resolve stronger than ever. After hitting level 100 as a spellcaster, a fresh job prompt emerged before him. Reaching berserker status required transitioning through fighter-type classes based on game rules. Instead of fighter paths, only more sorcery jobs displayed up, leaving him baffled. The man pondered aloud, wondering if starting over and grinding levels anew was even worth it. Frustrated by the lack of guidance, he dismissed it all with a shrug and shifted on. Confidence stayed firm, despite everything. He thought he couldn't be vanquished easily. One abrupt tumble from above interrupted his thoughts, crashing down with unexpected chaos. Rising anew, he stood before an immense, breathtaking view that silenced his mind. Amidst the scenery, forgotten feelings returned, reminding him how little he was in such a wide world. With renewed clarity, he smiled. Strength meant more when shared, and he was hardly any more alone. A determined grin, he proposed a bold trip, just the two of them, no matter the realm. Moan's invitation trailed, backed by his confidence in reaching the pinnacle job of their class line. The transformation was complete. Tuya Kisaragi had become a sage. Fresh start came with fresh potential, unlocking an immense array of skills and unmatched versatility. As the wagon rolled on, he contemplated. Sorcery had evolved, and so had he. Own passing considered made him wonder, could others reach sagehood through effort solitary? As he pondered, the girls beside him had already fallen asleep, worn out from the expedition. Looking at the ring in his hand, he noted its effect had finished currently, that he'd reached a top-tier job. Even so, it sensed unreal to possess something so brokenly useful. As rain started to fall, he urged the wagon forward with renewed urgency. One tone echoed through the estate, playfully calling out his tardiness. While one girl defended his absence, the other pouted on the sofa, longing for his return. Emotions rushed high. Attachment was obvious, though swiftly denied with embarrassed stubbornness. One's question broke the tension, shifting the mood toward memory and reflection. Recollection started from the moment she reached. When the estate first grew part of her story, stern noblewoman disclosed a secret. A house entity had been deliberately concealed to make the property sellable. Startled by being ignored, the entity girl had left, unable to remain where she sensed unwelcome. The incident led to a guild apology, a dishonest official's dismissal. Currently at ease, the girl enjoyed tea while sharing her fascination with spirits. Holding up a pastry, she curiously inquired how the noblewoman perceived Tuya. The woman replied without hesitation, affirming Tuya's identity with confident simplicity. Elsewhere, worry increased as the girls observed the worsening rain, troubled by how late their companions were in returning. On a muddy route, Tuya urged his steed forward, the downpour turning the expedition into a test of endurance. Inside the wagon, one girl looked out nervously, while her friend offered silent reassurance through a soft hug. Abruptly, her gaze widened. Outside stood several hooded figures, unmoving in the storm. A party in cloaks encircled the wagon, pretending to be travelers hoping to cross the border. Suspicion deepened as familiar faces emerged, with one man apologizing to Tuya, while others challenged the stranger's identity. The reality was shortly disclosed. They were armed knights from the Generet kingdom. Their leader mocked the party, confident in their pursuit as elite royal troops. Unfazed, Tuya shifted forward, repeating their name with growing intensity. As the rain fell heavily, she gazed out the window, silently worrying about Tuya's safety. Beneath the rain, armored knights form a blockade, close a halted wagon. Accusations fill the air, blame cast for fallen comrades. Without warning, a soldier lunges with blade drawn. Meeting the assault head-on, a horned fighter swiftly counters. From the wagon, an urgent call echoes demanding haste. While chaos unfolds, the fighter fends off another strike. Refusing to abandon her, the fighter braces herself, resolved to protect her companion at all costs. As foe forces tighten the trap, one declares none shall flee. Just afterward, a subtle hand gesture is made, peaceful yet deliberate, hinting that the tide of clash may shortly shift. With a mighty swing, the fighter disarms an enemy, sending the knight's helmet clattering to the ground, blade pointed. He steps onward, demanding their withdrawal. Though unsure of their exact motives, his stance leaves no room for compromise. Lone soldier, undeterred, lifts his enormous blade. He admits the fighter is formidable, but their task takes priority over retreat. From behind, an ally calls out, recognizing the attackers as elite troops from the realm. The hazard becomes clear. Determination hardens the soldier's gaze. Even with death looming, he refuses to fall back. One abrupt clash erupts as the swordsman unleashes a technique, his blade spiraling with skillful energy. Uncertainty flickers in his gaze. The man recognizes that restraint currently would mean death. The circumstances leaves no room for mercy. Close the wagon. He halts his clash horse. Though reluctant, he knows bloodshed is inevitable. Citizens fall by steel or sorcery in this world. Determination steals his gaze. The moment he accepted this world, he accepted its rules, even if it meant killing to survive. With blades raised, both warriors charge. The air splits as one shouts a grim resolve, echoing kill or be slew. The clash of steel halts as one soldier falters, uncertainty flickering in his gaze. Uncertainty settles in had he misjudged his opponent. With a shout, the swordsman launches skyward. Sorcery enhances his movement, and in an instant, he's among the foes, slicing through them in a blur. Blades collide from every direction, but he stands unfazed, turning the chaos into momentum. The man's counterattacks land with brutal precision. Debris flies as a mighty strike cleaves through stone, sending shockwaves across the field. Amid the rain and silence, he stands victorious, encircled by fallen foes. Blades press against her throat as foe knights seize the horned fighter, forcing the swordsman to freeze mid-step. He stops, but his presence solitary unsettles the opposition. Panic begins to show as one soldier demands answers, shaken by the aftermath of the previous clash. Remaining composed, the swordsman proposes a deal, attempting to shift the balance. The man's captured ally, however, rejects the ploy outright. Blood spills as she's hit anew, enduring pain without yielding. The woman's defiance burns stronger than terror. Using her as leverage, the opposition shouts demands. The girl in royal robes cries out in desperation, begging for peace before another life is lost. With steady hands, the swordsman raises 2 fingers and lowers his armament. The man's act of surrender draws gasps, but the pain on his ally's face shows the cost. Mockery follows. The knight believes the hazard has passed. The girl calls out with disbelief as her protector lowers his blade. The group's overconfidence swells. One declares victory, stepping closer with arrogance, unaware of the subtle signals being exchanged. An abrupt burst of wind sorcery erupts. The spell tears through the air, scattering the knights before they can react. In the chaos, the horned girl retaliates. The woman's blade lands true, striking down her captor with a last cry. Laughter escapes her lips through ragged breaths. With the last foe down, she assures the others it is only a scratch. Comfort softens the air as they reunite, close the wagon. Despite the pain, she smiles. The woman's companion apologizes, offering what little aid she can. Collectively, they support one another. The girl in royal robes expresses deep regret. Beside her, the swordsman remains wordless, called by name but lost and considered. Encircled by bodies, he stares into the rain. The storm hasn't halted, and neither have his questions solitary in his thoughts. He wonders why he came to this world at all. Standing beside the carriage, the youthful man softly asks to examine her wound. Astonished, the horned girl nods, watching as he prepares to help. With an even chant, he casts healing magic. One comforting light surrounds her arm, and the pain fades. Disbelief and comfort circulated across her face. The woman rises to her feet with his support. While grateful, he reminds them they must not leave the fallen as they are. The rain still pours. Collectively, they agree to finish what remains shoulder to shoulder yet anew. At last, clouds begin to break, the rain is ending, and a fresh way opens forward. Excitement fills the carriage as the party nears the settlement. Smiles return with the considered of meeting Nathalia, their destination eventually in sight. But the settlement gates are previously shut for the night. With no choice, the youthful man suggests they rest nearby and enter in the morning. Though slightly disappointed, the girls agree without protest. The woodland clearing becomes their temporary refuge. Iota scans the area, troubled by the considered of letting them sleep outdoors. The cramped wagon offers little comfort, sighing. He relents, but not before asking them to promise him something first. Before settling in, he asks the girls to keep his storage ability secret. Both nod in agreement, trusting his appeal without hesitation. With a flick, a tent appears. Though it looks plain from outside, he invites them to take a look, stepping inside. They freeze in amazement. The interior is enormous, comforting, furnished, and distant beyond their expectations. The group marvel at the magical comfort. Despite vowing not to pry, curiosity sparks playful questions. The man smiles, appreciating their wonder. Evening arrives softly. With laughter in the air, he gestures toward the fire. Dinner awaits, and so does well-obtained peace. With flames crackling beneath the pot, he prepares a simple feast. Though modest, the warmth is sufficient to lift spirits. Gratitude replaces tension as the girls watch. The man presents dry clothes, offering comfort after the rain. Both are astonished, touched by his thoughtfulness. Assembled around the table, they savor their first real feast in days. Silence fills with appreciation, not just for the meal, but for the moment itself. As night falls, he insists they rest in the tent. Someone must keep watch. Blushing, he looks away. Sharing a tent with two strangers, unthinkable. Within the cozy tent, the girls talk about Tuya. His power, kindness, and composed demeanor leave a lasting impression. Embarrassed, one recalls his intense clash stance with more emotion than expected. The woman's companion chides her softly, embarrassed by her bluntness. Still, both silently admire him. Thoughts of his bravery linger as they whisper into the night. Outside, Tuya sits beside the fire with his steed. Fatigue settles in. The man meant to ask questions, but exhaustion takes over. With a little smile, he jokes to the warhorse about being spied on, grateful for peace, even if brief. As the fire crackles beside him, Tuya mutters softly to his companion. Kokuyu, the warmth barely touches the thoughts circling in his mind. The man wonders aloud, has he passed the point of return? The question lingers in the night air like the drifting embers. Though uncertainty clouds his way, something in him still looks onward. Kokuyu nuzzles close, grounding him in the present, with a soft exhale. He leans into the creature's side. Stars shimmer overhead as sleep gradually takes hold. Morning dawns. The gates of Fendi await, and with them, a fresh chapter begins. As they enter town, a guard recognizes Tuya and questions the unfamiliar wagon. Steadily, Tuya explains the girls were victims of a bandit attack, and he assisted them return. Despite sympathizing, the guard insists on checking. Knowing the girls lack ID cards, Tuya had instructed them to act the part convincingly. Within the wagon, they huddle together, faking tears and trembling as they lament the loss of all their belongings. Won bursts into song, claiming survival is a blessing. The flare adds dramatic weight. Tuya watches, shocked. The sentinels buy it. The performance is flawless and theatrical. With the performance complete, the party is waved through the gate. The sentinels, convinced, wish them well and urge Tuya to take care of the traumatized girls. The group arrive at a cozy house nestled in town. Tuya calls out, and from within, a sharp tone answers someone familiar. Nathalia appears, unimpressed by his delay. The woman playfully accuses him of falling for her. Tuya brushes it off and introduces the guests. Suspicious at first, Nathalia's guard drops when she sees who they are. One joyful cry erupts. One girl leaps onward, hugging her tightly household reunited at last. The moment of reunion turns playful as Nathalia reacts to being called an elder. Recognition follows as she names Arthuria and Charlotte. Tears of delight are shared. Years of separation melt away in a heartfelt exchange. Outside, Kokuyu grazes peacefully inside. Nathalia is teased about her unchanged appearance, leading to lively protest. Nathalia is reunited with two girls, Ar and Char. After a long separation, the group's abrupt appearance surprises her. The group explained they were rescued by a boy named Tuya in the woodland. Puzzled, Nathalia learns that Tuya is currently being referred to as her disciple. Amused by the title, Nathalia proudly praises Tuya's actions. Elsewhere, Tuya is plainly annoyed but remains wordless. Outside, a plea is made. One representative from a distant land asks Nathalia to lend her power to aid their country in crisis. Touched. Nathalia hears rumors about the girl's parent. The woman is relieved to learn he is still alive. Suspicion rises as Tuya recognizes the girls, confirming his earlier doubts. Nathalia silently prepares to speak. Breaking the silence, she requests Tuya to provide temporary shelter for the girls at his estate. Although hesitant, she explains her worry. Others may visit and cause trouble if the girls remain with her. With urgency, she reveals the girls are fugitives and noble, and her knight being pursued by the realm's forces. Shifted by the seriousness, Tuya watches as Nathalia humbly bows, pleading with him to accept the responsibility. Although hesitant, Tuya learns that if the residence entity accepts him, he may welcome others into his home freely. The man recalls the moment during his contract signing, realizing that owner approval was all that mattered for fresh residents. Hearing this, the girls express curiosity about the residence entity. Nathalia explains the girls' formidable affinity with spiritual beings. Realizing their circumstance, Tuya concedes. The man agrees to provide shelter, knowing he can't turn them away in their time of need. Before departing for the guild, he tells them to meet afterward at his house, setting the plan in motion. Tuya delivers his report to the guild. The officer assigns burial preparations after hearing the details, noting the fallen troops. Among the retrieved belongings is a helmet. Its presence shocks everyone, signifying the identity of the opposition. He reveals that the party was ambushed in the woodland by the kingdom's troops. The man confirms the bodies were delivered back, though suspicious. He hides the reality about AR and Char, suggesting instead that the attackers were pursuing fleeing foes. Worry grows as it's disclosed. The incident may trigger an international crisis involving the Lunset Empire's collapse. The guild officer realizes the troops likely attempted to eliminate witnesses. Understanding the circumstances, he decides to escalate it to the guildmaster. Tuya urges secrecy and instructs Dalok to have someone discreet recover the bodies without spreading word. As Tuya leaves, the officer tries to return an unusual pig-shaped object, but Tuya declines, plainly annoyed by its presence. Outside, Dalok complains they can't focus with Tuya around. Tuya laughs it off, offering an apology. Curious, Tuya asks about the guildmaster. The man learns the man is the local lord's son, and rarely appears in public. Dalek describes the guildmaster bluntly, calling him nothing more than a stupid son, leaving the others puzzled. The man explains that the man avoids work and claims credit for things he never did, frustrating those surrounding him. Despite his quirks, some staff silently wish Ebrand would take the role instead, as the guild depends heavily on him. Whenever anxious about adventurers, the man finds comfort in carving odd sculptures, a habit well known to his peers. Still, as Ebrand reflects silently, he admits the man has his faults, but remains someone trustworthy when it matters. Within the estate, light conversation masks peaceful grief. One girl brushes another's hair, noting its mess, drawing a playful complaint. Melancholy returns as the memory of Garrett surfaces. Remembering his courage, her gaze grows heavy with emotion. Nathalia softly comforts both girls, acknowledging the hardships they've endured and the fresh threat looming close by. Visions of a champion rising in clash flash across her mind, a figure mighty sufficient to shift the tide alone. Even with such a fighter, she admits her power won't suffice. One return to Lunset Empire seems impossible for currently. No nation offers support to a side on the verge of defeat. But if a true champion emerged, everything might change. Talk shifts to Tuya. The man's power is so overwhelming that even R once proposed to him without thinking. Embarrassed by the memory, she hides her face, blushing profoundly, while Nathalia reacts with disbelief. Tuya's power is unlike anything seen before. By combining multiple forms of sorcery, he unleashes terrifying destruction. Laughter follows when someone recognizes the technique as one of Nathalia's spells. Pride mixes with disbelief as they recall his feats. Worry grows as they realize Tuya might shortly be drawn into the escalating war, despite their hesitation to involve him. The bell tower chimes, signaling it's time to leave. One girl mutters in awe about a sorcery spell she'd never seen. Upon arriving at a magnificent estate, the girls are amazed by the size and elegance of Tuya's estate. Laughter erupts as one jokes it employed to be her home. Tuya denies it, afterward prepares to introduce the residence entity. With dazzling speed, Ferris bursts into view, stunning the visitors with her abrupt and magical appearance. Tuya arrives slightly behind schedule, smiling despite the tension in his clenched fist as he prepares to face the others. Ferris notices his change in demeanor and softly asks if he's genuinely all right, concern evident in her face. A peaceful pause follows before Tuya reassures everyone with a lively tone, insisting he's perfectly fine. Abruptly, the party reacts in shock as the resident spirit speaks aloud. A revelation none of them anticipated. Mystery fills the chamber. Even Nathalia is baffled, confirming yet anew that this world always finds fresh ways to surprise. Excitement fills the air as Char expresses her delight about being able to speak with a house entity, something genuinely uncommon. The woman introduces herself in AR, thanking Towiya for his kindness in allowing them to stay under his roof. Ferris silently listens. Afterward stares in silence before Towiya realizes something is off. Tears well up as she calls him a dummy. The woman's emotions overflow, not from fury, but from feeling left out. Nathalia explains Ferris's talent to speak comes from her deep bond with Towiya, a secret meant to be cautiously guarded. Curiosity rises as Char and AR are challenged about their understanding of house spirits and what they genuinely are. The group respond with general assumptions, spirits that maintain cleanliness and structural integrity, echoing what scholars often suggest. But Ferris reveals the reality: a house entity's real power lies in perceiving every movement within the building, living or not. This talent makes house spirits invaluable. Towiya notes that such power could even lead to nobles or the military seizing the estate. With urgency, he shouts her name. Ferris isn't just helpful, she's become someone irreplaceable since his arrival in this world. Outside the mansion, Ferris retreats to a peaceful stable, accompanied only by a sizable silent horse. The woman sits beside the beast, neither speaking, sharing a moment of reflection in the stillness of the space. Guilt surfaces as she admits speaking harshly to Towiya. The warhorse listens silently, offering presence more than comfort. Memories rise, scenes from when she lived among citizens, never considering her purpose beyond maintaining the home's condition. Despite once being content to observe, something has shifted. The woman's world expanded. Now merely watching not anymore feels like enough. Nathalia asks what Ferris thinks of Towiya. With uncommon openness, Ferris admits she's never hoped to speak to anyone more. Loneliness had defined her existence. Currently, with someone who genuinely hears her, she feels seen for the first time. Tears form as she reflects on the delight of connecting with Towiya, realizing how profoundly she wants to apologize. Kokuyu, sensing the emotion, alerts Towiya, who rushes over, concerned for his companions. Laughter and apologies erupt. Ferris and Kokuyu both bow their heads, overwhelmed by emotion as Ferris tearfully begs for forgiveness. Towiya admits he acted without thinking about Ferris's feelings, realizing his decision may have hurt her more than he understood. Though the girls are indeed in threat, he also acknowledges being swept up in the moment and reacting too swiftly. They swiftly clarify the circumstances. It was their plea that delivered Towiya into this, not his own recklessness. With desperation in their tones, they remind everyone they're being hunted. There's no one else they can count on, despite everything. They wish to be companions with Ferris, not just Towiya, hoping for understanding and trust to grow. Ferris accepts their offer of friendship. A soft grin appears as everyone expresses thanks with sincere comfort. Nathalia silently observes the stable. Afterward, boldly declares she'll live in the estate too. Towiya protests. Taken by surprise, the woman insists she'll commute if required, but jokes she must keep him in check. Char and AR laugh at her teasing. The question shifts to Ferris. Towiya hesitates, but believes having Nathalia around might make things safer for them all. Without pause, Nathalia suggests celebrating with sweets. Kokuyu cheers in delight, and the estate feels lighter than ever. Compliments pour in as the girls rave about Towiya's sweets, claiming they taste too good to belong to this world. Nathalia admits she was tempted by those very same treats when she first got involved with Towiya and the estate. Towiya sighs but allows the moment. For today, he agrees to let things slide and enjoy the peace. As the party gathers around Kokuyu, laughter fills the yard. What was once peaceful currently brims with warmth and life. Excitement echoes from the estate's walls. With rooms chosen and baths discovered, their shared life officially begins. Guildmaster Sinance grows agitated, warning that the issue at hand is distant, too sizable to ignore. Frustration boils over as he's dismissed. The man storms off, declaring he'll report everything to his parent. Responsibility is compelled upon Ebrand. He's told to manage the circumstances involving the explorer Towiya directly. Left solitary with rising pressure, Ebrand puts on the helmet, uncertain of what step to take next. With a subdued gesture, the girl placed her hand on the window pane. Thoughts of seeking Towiya's aid weighed heavily on her mind. As the nation's fate increased uncertain, the idea sparked worry. Recalling Nathalia's warning, the blonde girl voiced her unease. Towiya's involvement could mean direct participation in the coming warchar. Standing firm, prompted her companion of her duty as Empress. Protecting the Empire required action, even if it meant great risk. One few days afterward, both girls reached in town. To integrate, they applied for guild registration, silently drawing attention from those close by. Standing before a little crowd, AR introduced herself wearing a grin, followed by Char's polite greeting. Tuya found himself flustered at the counter, taken by surprise by teasing remarks. The clerk jokingly pointed out that he appeared encircled by attractive girls. Across the chamber, a recognizable figure approached. With a confident stride, Finn shifted forward, drawing the attention of his companion. One tense exchange trailed. Finn called out to Dai, who turned to face a pair of girls close by. Beyond the guild, the girls eventually relaxed. One acknowledged her nervousness, having assumed the guild would be a much more intimidating place than it actually was. To their astonishment, a crowd swiftly assembled. Guild members welcomed them with open arms, offering assistance and invitations. Pleased with their success, the girls celebrated their official registration. AR beamed with delight, calling attention to their fresh explorer status, while Char gazed relieved. Despite the light atmosphere, Char swiftly refocused. Their task stayed unchanged once they fully recognized their nation's condition. Shortly afterward, she informed her companions of her plan to return home with Nathalia. The decision sensed necessary, though it weighed heavily on her mind. The conversation turned serious. Concerns were raised about potential threats they might face, especially if military forces stood in their way. Char hesitated, unable to offer a confident answer. Elsewhere, another tone cut through the uncertainty from an open window. Nathalia observed the party below. Between bites of her snack, she challenged their readiness and jokingly mentioned the meal they'd miss. AR confidently reported her progress, boasting a level of 37. Char, embarrassed, silently acknowledged. Hers was only 5. Her grin hiding slight embarrassment with a sheepish look. Char clarified she'd been preparing in different ways, learning etiquette and enjoying theater, not combat. Another woman emerged, scolding Char's upbringing and reminding her of her identity as an entity spellcaster. Despite the scolding, Char spoke with newfound resolve. The woman thought in her hidden potential the power to wield the Great Spirit as power. Within the guild, Tuya expressed astonishment upon learning Char's class, Entity Magician. The receptionist confirmed its rarity with enthusiasm, making the revelation still more significant. Char acknowledged her current limitations, explaining she could only use weaker spirits. Still, her potential stirred admiration. As they gazed across the foreign landscape, Tuya marveled at the uniqueness of this world. To him, even its job system sensed unfamiliar compared to games he once understood. Worry returned. If Char couldn't struggle, her usefulness was challenged. The woman wrestled with doubts about returning unprepared. Determined, AR shifted forward and made a bold request. She wanted training from Tuya. Char, too, inquired for his guidance. R abruptly proclaimed her weakness, admitting she sensed powerless. The woman's outburst startled Char, who hadn't expected such a confession. Tears welled in Era's gaze as she clenched her fists. The woman couldn't bear the considered of failing to protect Char when it mattered most. From the wagon, Char contemplated on her past. Always guarded by others, she considered of her parents and her own helplessness in times of crisis. With emotion building, Char shifted forward. The woman expressed her desire to grow stronger, not for herself, but to help others too. Elsewhere, Nathalia struggled with her students' lack of progress, bewildered by their inability to perform even the simplest sorcery. Tuya, seeing the girls' determination, consented to help them level up. The man's inner thoughts disclosed his true reason: he couldn't bear to abandon them to threat. Before training could begin, they required supplies. Nathalia proposed a trip to the marketplace. At the busy market, vendors greeted Tuya warmly. One butcher proposed fresh meat, while another stallkeeper spotted he wasn't with his usual companion. Villagers generously handed him meal, appreciating his presence. Even a cat proposed a friendly meow, adding warmth to the scene. With baskets full, Char noted how well known Tuya was. He modestly clarified that stocking up was routine before venturing into clash. R and Tuya observed her from farther away, noting how cheerful she looked, freed from the aristocrat restraints of her homeland. While Char admired the accessories, her face shifted, growing peaceful. Tuya and R were hit by how unimaginable her noble life must have been. Afterward, the girls stood in awe as Tuya proposed them mighty equipment. Concerned, they questioned whether it was genuinely okay to use such valuable items. Tuya clarified their magical gear. Char's staff boosted her sorcery, while R's shield strengthened her defenses in critical strikes. Reassuring them, Tuya clarified they were just borrowing these uncommon treasures. With such mighty tools, their chances of surviving battles had greatly improved. Tuya tossed 2 little rings to the girls, casually insisting they take them. The gesture puzzled them. Upon closer inspection, the rings disclosed a hidden power granting 100 times more experience to primary jobs. Both girls were startled to receive such uncommon objects at once. Tuya, however, brushed it off, calling them excess baggage in jest. Afterward that night, they stood under the stars, reflecting on the rings. A soft breeze transported unspoken emotions. In this world, rings held deeper meaning. AR blushed, realizing Tuya had unknowingly proposed to both of them. The group stood on the balcony, silently discussing Tuya. The recent gift of rings left them wondering if he genuinely intended more than support. R, embarrassed yet smiling, boldly proclaimed she'd take responsibility if it was a proposal. The woman would proudly become his wife. Char, with a soft look, acknowledged her feelings as well. Though duty-bound by royalty, part of her longed for freedom. The group laughed off the tension and wrapped up the conversation. For currently, they resolved, training came first, elsewhere. Tuya readied them for what lay forward: the basics of level grinding in the northern woods. Monsters charged from the woodland, forcing Char and AR to flee in panic. Tuya yelled from behind, reminding them to focus on experience points, not just survival. Exhausted and shaken, the girls regrouped. Tuya scolded them seriously. Level grinding was no playground activity. As another monster neared, Tuya advanced in without hesitation. Steadily, he assured them he'd heal everything but instant death. Eventually, the chaos settled. The group chose a clearing as their temporary base and started setting up camp. Before they could relax, Tuya cautioned them about his next object. Yet after today's madness, Char and R doubted anything could astonish them anymore. Tuya summoned a full 2-story guild house amid the center of the forest. It came fully equipped with bath, toilet, and monster-repelling effects. Char and R were left speechless, standing in the rain before the unexpected building. The group's disbelief was visible. As they neared, the warhorse casually unsealed the door for them. AR yelled in confusion, unable to process how a house abruptly emerged. The man clarified it was a guild facility bought with real funds, long forgotten in storage, and essential for forming a proper guild. The girls, overwhelmed, could only sigh. The group were more exhausted from this astonishment than any monster struggle. Encouragement packed the air as Tuya vowed to make dinner. His lively words lifted the party's spirits. Rings gleamed on their hands, a wordless vow to push onward collectively. Days turned into weeks. Training grew their routine. Each moment in the woodland focused on improving their combat skills and raising their levels. Fatigue built, but progress was clear. Both girls had grown stronger, despite the exhaustion. None of them desired their effort to go to waste. An intense foe emerged. Without hesitation, weapons were drawn. Coordination replaced terror. Blades clashed and roars echoed. Determination blazed in their gazes as they battled with everything they had. R yelled her trust while blades clashed around them. Char focused her sorcery, calling upon the wind entity for strength, as the air surged surrounding her. Afterward, worry lingered in her mind. While serving tea, she inquired Ferris how she might gain the favor of higher spirits. Ferris explained the reality softly. No matter how willing the spirits, they couldn't lend their power if the mage's vessel was too small to receive it. Understanding bloomed in clash. She shoved her limits, expanding her vessel through resolve and courage, unleashing raw entity energy. Wind sorcery tore through their foes. One precise chant, one deadly gale. Victory surged on her command. Praise rang out after a mighty spell. AR called it Char's strongest yet. Confidence glowed in her gaze one day. She would wield the power of the great entity. Rain pattered around them as she gazed toward her ring. Since receiving it, their levels had climbed faster than she ever imagined. But deeper down, she thought something else. Her power came from Tuya's care, from the bond they shared. Not just the ring's sorcery. The woman's comment left the others puzzled. R challenged her words. Tuya stayed wordless. Char eventually acknowledged the ring boost's experience. Tuya, relieved it worked, missed the feelings hidden beneath her words. Embarrassed by her earlier comment, Char swiftly played it off as a joke. AR caught on and nervously laughed along, pretending to have recognized it all along. Tuya, uncertain how to react, shifted the party's attention back to the assignment. A fallen horse in the distance seemed to agree. Several days afterward, in Fendi, Char and AR strolled the streets. Embarrassment lingered as they contemplated on past moments, each secretly feeling competitive. Conversation turned serious anew. The group had grown stronger, but threats from home still loomed. With a playful grin, Char lifted a finger and proclaimed their power came from love. One unusual comment slipped out of Char's mouth, earning laughter from R. Taken by surprise, she swiftly waved it off, embarrassed by her own boldness. Not long after, they rushed into familiar faces from the guild. Pleasant greetings turned slightly awkward as one boy struggled to hide his embarrassed expression. With a sheepish grin, he inquired them to pass a message to someone else, his face plainly red with embarrassment. The other explorer was more lively, pleased that Tuya had eventually formed bonds beyond his usual solitude. As the party strolled away, the girl smiled. For Tuya, this peaceful life in town might be exactly what he required. Char remained wordless, her heart conflicted. Despite all they had earned, uncertainty lingered beneath the delight. Was this genuinely a blessing or a burden waiting to return? Abruptly, noise erupted from the street. Smoke and fire trailed a recognizable flag. Disbelief circulated across their faces. Elsewhere, Tuya was called to a meeting. The guild master joked about his newfound popularity, but urgency shadowed his words. One messenger had reached from the Generet kingdom. The group had tracked the girls to this very town. Peace was hardly anymore an option. The opposition had crossed the border, demanding the return of a runaway princess. Tuya understood the troops had come for the royal household's daughter. Faced with the demand to hand her over, he silently weighed his decision. The guildmaster seated across the desk cautioned him of the consequences. Opposing the empire would mean becoming the opposition of every explorer in town. At the Fendi town lord's estate, accusations rang out as troops from the Generet kingdom were blamed for an unauthorized border-crossing. Tension gripped the estate. Lord Galen von Sinance, visibly agitated, demanded to know why his town must shoulder the blame. A delegation from Generet reached, led by a smug noble who challenged the settlement's denial of the incident, his guards standing firmly behind him. Though flustered, the settlement lord swiftly denied any hostility, prompting a pleased reaction from the visiting noble. To ease tensions, Galen claimed the troops had accidentally crossed during a classified task, hinting at deeper secrets. Officials concluded that the royal daughter of the fallen Lunnet Empire likely fled to this very town. Traces confirmed her last known location. One appeal was made to assist in her capture, with promises of peaceful negotiation. Ebrand, hearing a name, recalled an explorer's involvement. The envoy disclosed the Empire's capital had previously succumbed, deepening the mystery around the girl's escape and the abrupt pursuit. Despite capturing the Emperor, unrest stayed. The Empire's division into autonomous regions, humans, dwarves, elves, and beastmen, only complicated matters further. Resistance flared. Beastmen and elves declined to surrender, rallying collectively in open defiance of the invaders. Chained and injured, Char stayed imprisoned as talks of surrender loomed. Despite efforts, the Emperor declined to submit, prolonging the conflict. News of the opposition's plans circulated. Char was to be employed as leverage. Disbelief and fury surfaced among those who understood her. Ebrand pressed the girl for clarity, his worry evident. Her hesitation displayed she recognized the growing threat. Under pressure, the settlement readied to surrender the fugitives. Both the Lord and Guildmaster were backed into a corner. Even so, doubts lingered. The girl challenged why such sacrifice was made for those who violated the border first. Determined, the girl proclaimed her determination to oppose the Generet Empire. The woman couldn't stand by, knowing she'd regret abandoning those who trusted her. Elsewhere, Ebrand disclosed the ambassador would remain in town for 3 days. By afterward, the Empress was to be handed over. Astonished by the delay, the girl challenged his motives. The man proposed her time, though the reasons behind it stayed vague. Laughing nervously, Ebrand acknowledged it was easier to concede than clash with her will. The woman's intensity left little room for debate. Though reluctant to lose the settlement's top explorer, he respected her choice. Ultimately, her way belonged to her solitary. Ebrand declined to hand over a crucial object, trembling as he clutched it tightly, yet unwilling to yield. Descending the stairs, the girl encountered a recognizable face. Despite the tension, a brief moment of recognition softened her face. Astonishment turned into delight as she identified the newcomer Lumina, a seasoned fighter once clad in clash gear. The reunion sparked memories. Currently in casual attire, Lumina laughed off the change. Wearing armor daily, she clarified, would draw unusual looks outside of work. Gripping her blade, she disclosed her purpose. She had come to retrieve the armament left in the guild's care, ready yet again for duty. The girl spotted Lumina's unfamiliar blade. Curious, she inquired, and Lumina smiled, impressed by the observation. Holding the blade softly, Lumina disclosed it was a nameless heirloom. Though elderly, she maintained it in top condition for moments of true threat. The woman's power wasn't just for show. Time and anew, Lumina had proven her prowess in clash, completing missions with unwavering precision. The woman brushed off compliments with humor, insisting flattery would earn nothing still. She welcomed the comforting exchange. With an even expression, Lumina confessed. Behind her blade and power lay an unreturned affection, her wordless, one-sided love. Reflecting on her time in town, the girl understood how numerous citizens she'd met and how much their progress inspired her to keep moving onward. Distant from her thoughts, word circulated that agents of the realm had arrived. The group's presence threatened to disrupt everything. It grew clear these envoys were the ones pursuing the fugitives. The group's entrance into town wasn't by chance. Zone of the girls shifted forward, officially requesting Tuya's help as an adventurer to escort them home. Although she acknowledged her appeal was selfish, she emphasized their need. Tuya's unknown power was the only optimism they could rely on. With conviction, she proclaimed her willingness to do whatever it took to save her citizens, even if it meant offering everything. Despite having no riches, the exiled empress wished her status still held value. The woman's tone wavered between pride and desperation. Tears welled up as she vowed to dedicate herself entirely to Tuya, believing her sincerity might earn his help. Char interrupted the moment, scoffing at the idea. The woman doubted someone so youthful could win Tuya's heart. Brimming with self-confidence, Char boasted about her own charm, while the others gazed on with mixed disbelief and wordless judgment. Known mysterious liquor, laced with aphrodisiac, was introduced by Nathalia. The woman claimed it could make any man fall in love. When challenged about its purpose, she acknowledged frustration over her charm never working on humans, prompting her to craft the potion. Confidently, Nathalia held up the bottle, hoping it would force Tuya to acknowledge the royal lineage. The woman's wisdom of alchemy was undeniable. However, the Empress refused the idea. The woman couldn't deceive someone who had shown them such kindness. With firm resolve, she chose honesty over trickery, vowing to ask Tuya for help with nothing but her true feelings. Nathalia mentioned R had gone shopping and would return shortly. While waiting, she inquired for help organizing her belongings. Outside, AR made her way back with a bag in hand, apologizing as she entered. The wine she was inquired to find wasn't available. As she gazed around, her gaze landed on a bottle sitting on the shelf, the same one discussed earlier. Curiosity sparked. Elsewhere, Tuya strolled through the bustling streets. One vendor proposed skewers, but his mind was elsewhere, distracted by deeper concerns. The man couldn't shake the pressure. One wrong move could drag the entire town into chaos, and the burden rested on his shoulders. Tuya returned to find Ferris waiting. The man wasn't sure how long he could remain in town and concerned about leaving her behind. Inside, everyone had something crucial to share, but instead of rushing, they consented to talk after dinner. One of the girls, freshly bathed and lively, prompted them how hungry she was. AR confirmed the groceries were previously in the kitchen. Without delay, Tuya started preparing the feast. The man's hands shifted swiftly, slicing ingredients with practiced ease. Adapting well to this fresh world, he found delight in cooking. Even elaborate dishes grew possible, reminiscent of those from his own world. With a last touch, Tuya stated the feast was ready. The smell drew immediate attention from the others close by. Excited cheers erupted as they assembled around the table. Among the dishes, the hamburger stood out, a favorite cherished by numerous. One girl pointed out a missing detail, prompting Tuya to swiftly fix it by adding a little flag. Just like before, the woman beamed with delight. That simple decoration, originally a joke, had become a comforting tradition she treasured. As they started eating, compliments flowed. The meal was delicious, and surprisingly, the wine paired perfectly with it all. While enjoying dinner, one girl cheerfully disclosed she had delivered wine from Nathalia's home. Its taste was unusual, but surprisingly good. Laughter filled the chamber as Nathalia abruptly recognized the wine. It was her own concoction, one laced with aphrodisiac. As the wine took effect, Char's expression shifted, surrounding her. Others started acting strangely. Tuya sensed dizzy confusion clouding his thoughts. By morning, sunlight streamed through the windows. Tuya woke groggily, piecing collectively scattered memories from the night before. Lying beside him were the others, peacefully asleep, leaving Tuya shocked and overwhelmed by what had just unfolded. Tuya awoke in disbelief, finding himself in bed encircled by three girls, all peacefully asleep beside him. Panic set in. Puzzled and flushed, he recalled fragments of the night before. He had been transported to the chamber after collapsing. The girls gazed equally embarrassed. None of them could remember the details, only that things turned unusual after the wine. The group swiftly apologized. The wine had been taken without permission, and they hadn't intended for things to unfold that way. Nathalia awkwardly acknowledged her aphrodisiac-laced wine was only meant for men. The misunderstanding left everyone embarrassed and Tuya utterly speechless. The next day, Tuya eventually brought up the matter the girls had wished to discuss. He questioned whether they genuinely wished for his help returning home. Reality was disclosed. Charlotte was the first princess of the Lunnet Empire, and Arthuria came from a noble knight household sworn to protect the throne. Though they couldn't offer payment instantly, Charlotte formally requested Tuya's aid to reclaim her kingdom. Despite his distrust of royalty, Tuya sensed sincerity. The man acknowledged he could trust Charlotte. Determined, she vowed never to let herself be handed over even if others demanded it. Tuya steadily stated he declined to get involved in their war. The man's promise only extended to safely escorting them to the Empire. Still, he contemplated on what genuinely mattered, living peacefully with Ferris and Kokuyu. Char suggested bringing them along. Charlotte clarified that moving the resident spirit was possible, but only if a spirit crystal stone was used to house it. The woman proposed one as a reward despite its rarity. The Empire had only two. Both weighed national treasures. Tuya afterward recalled the entity stone necklace in his possession. Perhaps it could serve the same purpose. Charlotte and AR were startled to learn Tuya previously possessed a spirit crystal stone, something even the Empire considered an uncommon treasure. Tuya clarified casually, that in his previous world, it was just a common object from a game dungeon. The man never imagined it would become so crucial. Without hesitation, he proposed the necklace to Ferris, asking if it could work for their purpose. The group consented. If Tuya wore it, it should allow the transfer. With optimism, he set the necklace around his neck. Wand Flash confirmed success. Ferris, currently linked through the stone, was safely transferred. Tuya cautiously activated the sorcery stone, summoning a mysterious girl from within. She reassured him with an even smile, expressing comfort in the presence of his magic. The man's power, she clarified, made the transition soft abruptly. Another girl, Nathalia, hurried in and lifted her excitedly, surprising everyone. The moment broke the tension with laughter and light-heartedness. Afterward, the elf girl acknowledged she had known she could remain within the stone, but stayed so she could be close to Tuya. With fresh resolve, she proposed to accompany him to the Empire. Though unsure of her feelings, she smiled, ready for the expedition forward. Tuya stated their next destination, rallying his companions. Their faces lit up with excitement as they prepared for the expedition to the Lunid Empire. As they stood collectively, one girl teased Tuya, revealing he'd won all their hearts. Inside a grand estate, the youthful man stood bewildered as someone praised him for unknowingly gaining 3 wives. The man's puzzled expression betrayed his astonishment. Facing 3 girls, he attempted to explain that nothing happened, just sharing a bed, nothing more. But the girls stood firm, watching him closely. One of them clarified the meaning of sleeping collectively, making sure he recognized what it implied. The woman spoke without hesitation. The weight of the circumstances sank in as he challenged why all 3 had to be involved. The man's nervousness was clear. Blushing, one girl acknowledged it had been her first time too, fidgeting as she disclosed her honesty. The girls confronted Nathalia with astonishment, startled to learn she lacked experience despite her maturity. The woman awkwardly acknowledged past chances slipped away. Nathalia, embarrassed, confessed how others had always dismissed her with excuses. The woman's wisdom was never sufficient to overcome their hesitation. Trying to clarify the misunderstanding, the youthful man clarified that what happened the night before wasn't what they thought. The man's tone stayed composed. With a grave expression, he began a basic explanation, greatly to his own embarrassment. The girl's reactions ranged from disbelief to irritation. Glancing at Nathalia, he hesitated. Afterward, calling her aside, he chose to address things more personally, unsure of what would come next. While nervously explaining, he attempted to describe what sleeping together actually meant, but swiftly trailed off into vague mumbling. Nathalia confidently proclaimed her understanding, cheerfully summarizing the explanation. The other 2 girls gazed blankly, shocked by her casual tone. Realizing the misunderstanding had escalated, Nathalia panicked and backtracked, laughing awkwardly. The woman acknowledged her mistake and apologized for jumping to conclusions. Elsewhere, an older fighter recalled a similar misunderstanding. Embarrassed and furious, he cursed the one who had once misled him the same way. Wanting to show appreciation, Nathalia handed over a glowing book to Tuya, expressing sincere gratitude for his support and power. Tuya obtained the ornate book with curiosity as Nathalia clarified it was a gift tied to her past work in the Empire. As he unsealed it, a vision surfaced: an armored champion from centuries ago, once summoned like him, leaving behind wisdom in this very book. None of the others could read its text, not even Nathalia, despite her scholarly background. After examining the script, Tuya confirmed it was a diary. The man noted the language was unfamiliar to them, but clear to him. Recognizing the Japanese characters, he understood it was his native tongue. Though aged, the text was still legible, sufficient to uncover its secrets. Tuya's talent to read the book shocked the others. The group pondered aloud if he might be a champion himself, unfamiliar with the term Japanese, embarrassed. Tuya denied being a champion. Elsewhere, Nathalia expressed her wish to learn from his wisdom and insight. Explaining further, he acknowledged he was once summoned by the Generate Kingdom as a champion, though unqualified and ultimately discarded. That rejection had fueled his determination. Not anymore a mere outsider, he currently introduced himself with pride as a summoned sage. Curious, Nathalia inquired about the sage mentioned in the diary, hoping an elder could explain its true meaning. One elder clarified that sage was a legendary title in their elf village. Encouraged by those words, Nathalia smiled. The woman sensed the description matched her aspirations, one who stands at the top of reason. Clutching the book under the great tree, she recalled her childhood dreams. The tales of heroes stirred excitement in her heart yet anew. Determined, she immersed herself in study. Becoming a sage meant recognition, a way that would make her presence undeniable to all. Though mocked as a self-proclaimed sage, she never gave up with resolve. She left her village to explore the human world and grow stronger. Seasons passed and leaves fell. Although she once proclaimed her determination, Nathalia still hadn't reached the way of a sage. Abruptly, she neared Tuya in a rush, her footsteps loud and urgent, startled. He turned to meet her gaze. With intense resolve, she yelled her plea. Aware of the challenge, she still begged to learn the steps toward becoming a true sage. Humbled and earnest, she lowered her head. Seeing her sincerity, Tuya softly set his hand on her in wordless encouragement. In response, he started explaining the world's job system. The woman's lineage, he noted, would shape the possibilities forward of her. Nathalia was shocked to learn Tuya had previously shifted jobs twice, after surpassing level 100, a feat that left her speechless. The woman challenged how someone so youthful could train so intensely. Even with her long life, reaching level 72 had taken considerable time. Tuya acknowledged he may have shoved himself too hard. The others, elsewhere, noted that Nathalia had also reached high levels during her time in the Empire. Arthuria and Charlotte, currently stronger than Nathalia, disclosed their own remarkable levels, startled and embarrassed. Nathalia demanded answers. How had they succeeded in surpassing her so swiftly and in such a short span? Nathalia panicked upon seeing rings on the girl's fingers, mistaking them for proposals. Tuya attempted to explain it was considerably more complicated than that. Questions arose about magical objects. Was there genuinely something that could enhance experience gain? The concept appeared unreal to them. Tuya acknowledged his homeland held unfamiliar wisdom. Nathalia admired the mystery of his world, marveling at its wonders. Though unsure how to return home, Tuya stayed composed. Nathalia proposed her wisdom, hoping it might one day help him. Grateful, she expressed sincere thanks. The once blurry way to becoming a sage currently emerged, clear thanks to Tuya's guidance and support. Nathalia boldly proclaimed she wouldn't fall behind the other girls. The woman, too, desired Tuya's symbolic ring, a sign of his affection. As they discussed gifts and power, a girl neared. Tuya gazed up, alerted by her presence at the gate. Malua, out of breath, delivered urgent news from Ebrand. The woman's face was serious as she handed over the message. The circumstances was grave. The guildmaster and Generette troops were expected by noon. Plans had to be made swiftly. With a soft grin, Malua inquired for a little favor. Though things might grow lonely, she vowed she'd return one day, with little time remaining. Tuya stated the end of his shop contract. Nathalia steadily stated she had previously packed everything essential into storage. Proudly, she prompted him her storage sorcery could hold over 5,000 kilograms. Preparations for their next trip had previously begun. Before parting, Malua shyly shifted forward. She thanked Tuya and challenged whether she could appeal one final favor in return. Smiling nervously, she inquired for permission to give a hug, not to him, but to someone else entirely. Climbing up with joy, she embraced the warhorse tightly, tears in her gaze. The woman's childhood dream had eventually come true. With a bittersweet grin, Malua saluted Tuya. The woman thanked him for everything and expressed her optimism they would meet anew. As their departure neared, Tuya called out to Ferris, asking the warhorse to enter his storage necklace. Malua waved goodbye. The party finalized preparations. Tuya suggested walking to the settlement's edge before summoning their carriage for the expedition ahead. Looking back, Tuya gazed at the estate with lingering emotion. Though lovely, it was time to say farewell. The man smiled softly. It was in that estate he met Ferris. With a decisive gesture, he proclaimed he'd rather take it with him. With a light-hearted grin, Tuya made a wishful gesture toward the estate. Although he understood it was impossible, he permitted himself to dream. Abruptly, the girls looked on with disbelief as something bizarre happened. The ground trembled, and the estate vanished before their gazes. Tuya gasped, horrified. What was once a joke had somehow become reality. His gaze widened in disbelief. Everyone demanded answers. The man stumbled, realizing the entire estate had been sucked into his storage by accident. Embarrassed, Tuya insisted he didn't understand this world's object limits. Elsewhere, Nathalia proudly prompted them of her 5,000 kilogram storage capacity. Nathalia, still embarrassed by the estate incident, demanded answers from Tuya during their travels. The man gave a nervous chuckle, unable to explain everything just yet. When inquired, Tuya swiftly claimed it was an emergency appeal, dodging further questions. The guard was relieved to see the girls anew. Oblivious to recent events, he encouraged them with lively words. Beyond the city, the wagon rolled steadily across the open road. One peaceful moment settled in. Tuya smiled at the sky. When Nathalia inquired what was wrong, he merely replied, "Nothing." Keeping his thoughts to himself, Fendi faded into the distance as the party departed. Grateful for their time there, a wordless farewell echoed between the rooftops. News of their departure circulated swiftly. One man was shocked, realizing the girls had left with Tuya without warning. Tension rose within the political circles. Orders flew, accusations flared, and preparations for pursuit started without delay. Frustration boiled over. An envoy proclaimed the termination of friendly relations with the settlement. Enraged by what he noticed as betrayal, others called for composed leadership of the guild would shift to a brand, seen as more capable than those currently in power. One uncommon summons from the guildmaster stirred movement through the streets. One man hurried, trying to catch up with the ambassador. Within the guild, adventurers assembled in sizable numbers. Most were focused on potential rewards, unconcerned about the reason behind the call. One of them mentioned Tuya, wondering if he'd join the commission. Spirits lifted at the considered of drinking collectively afterward. As anticipation rose, Lumina entered. Her presence instantly shifted the mood to something considerably more serious. A clash-ready wagon, flanked by armed troops, makes its way toward the northern woods. Rumors from a traveling merchant hint at its mysterious purpose. Inside the settlement, concerns rise as officials recognize the woodland as a hazardous zone frequented by adventurers. Taking that way invites unnecessary threat. Determined to assist, a female fighter organizes a pursuit party. The group's goal is to reach the princess and secure diplomatic goodwill between nations. The northern woods conceals a route to the Lunid Empire, yet constant threats from mighty monsters deter most travelers. Despite exhaustion, the party continues on foot. Using a wagon would only hinder their progress through the dense and perilous terrain. Laughter echoed through the woodland as Char energetically leapt onto a companion's back, lightening the mood with playful demands soon afterward. The party was reminded of their goal. Nathalia, focused and determined, called everyone to action, urging them onward. As they resumed their trip, conversations turned serious. Char, once dismissed as a worthless royal, currently stood proud, drawing praise from her allies. Confusion circulated when their steed, Kokyu, halted unexpectedly. Sensing unease, the party paused, gaze scanning the surroundings. Among the undergrowth, a hidden figure stirred. Someone, an explorer, had been watching them from the shadows. Suspicion lingers as they ponder whether the fallen adventurers merely misjudged their own abilities. Grim memories resurface, acknowledging the cruel nature of the world. The youthful man recalls the weight of taking a life and the necessity of choosing a path forward. Abruptly, a projectile darts through the air. The warhorse, alert and swift, reacts instantly to the incoming threat. Thanks to Kokyu's sharp instincts, the hazard is averted. Just afterward, a tone approaches, declaring the search is over. They've eventually been found. One party of troops arrives, requesting compliance from none other than Princess Charlotte herself. Criticism erupts as the troops scold the party for the trouble they've caused. Meanwhile, the youthful woman silently expresses admiration for the princess she longed to meet. Offended by her rejection, the envoy insults the princess with cruel words. Tension swiftly rises between the two parties, outraged by the disrespect. The horned fighter steps onward in defense. The woman's fury is visible, yet restrained by a cautious hand. Before conflict erupts, the party is ordered to retreat. Recognition spreads as they notice familiar faces among the opposing ranks. The standoff softens. The adventurers from the settlement of Fendi stand disclosed, bridging uncertainty with recognition. As tension builds, Tuya steps onward, offering to handle the circumstances himself while the others wait for a signal, ignoring his warning. The troops rush in with orders to capture the princess. Recognition flickers in Tuya's gaze as he studies the opposition ranks. Onlookers whisper about the explorer's rumored power. Despite the numbers, some remain doubtful of his chances. Abruptly, the ambassador demands the princess be spared, but all others are to be slew. Tuya braces for the overwhelming assault. With intense determination, Tuya launches into clash, meeting the opposition's blades with unrelenting force. Tuya tears through foe ranks with overwhelming power, his blade cutting through armor like paper. Spectators can only marvel at his power. The man's restraint becomes clear as he holds back against adventurers, causing some to question his determination. Criticism brews from those expecting ruthlessness. Determined to act, the elf girl clenches her staff. The woman believes the burden of the clash should have fallen to her. Amid chaos, Kokyu intervenes, subduing foes and protecting Tuya. Gratitude mixes with urgency as the confrontation rages on. Staring with disbelief, the ambassador realizes the terrifying reality. Tuya is decimating his elite forces. Panic spreads among the adventurers as retreat is debated, but the hazard to Fendi forces them to stand their ground. In desperation, the ambassador demands full cooperation. The man's authority backed by force leaves no room for defiance. With pressure mounting, he issues a brutal command to kill the opposition. Returning empty-handed is not an option. Toya, sighing in resignation, prepares himself. The way onward leaves little room for mercy. From the rear, Lumina steps onward. Calm yet commanding, she announces her intent to challenge Toya, forcing the confrontation into a fresh phase. Lumina steps onward, her blade drawn, offering gratitude for the chance to wield it with meaning. The woman sees their clash as inevitable fate. With peaceful resolve, she explains the purpose behind her blade's care. It's meant for battles where survival isn't guaranteed. Tuya listens and acknowledges her intent. Elsewhere, former comrades plead for understanding. They never hope to struggle him and currently seek unity over conflict. A comforting grin spreads across Tuya's face as he accepts their respect. Touched by their words, still he affirms his way. As an explorer, he'll walk the route he chose. Day's abrupt emotional outburst causes confusion, prompting embarrassed reactions from those close by. The tension between allies and rivals mounts. Without hesitation, Lumina charges in. The woman's strike is fast and sharp. Tuya barely reacts in time. Amused by the intensity, the clash escalates. Encircled by multiple illusions or rapid movements, Tuya deflects a flurry of incoming blows with precision. Observers note Lumina's strategy. Using her smaller blade and the woodland's tight space, she presses the advantage relentlessly. Despite the hazard, Tuya grins. The challenge excites him, while Lumina sees a genuine chance to claim victory. Spotting an opening, Dai shouts as Lumina rushes onward. Everyone urges her to strike, while Tuya's guard is down instead of attacking. Tuya reveals a glowing spell in his palm. Realization hits Lumina she's being manipulated into creating space. The woman hesitates, puzzled by his restraint. Tuya admits he only required distance to switch weapons. With sincerity, he explains it's not about underestimating her. The man wishes to struggle with his best out of respect for her ability. As she smiles boldly, Lumina questions if he is ready to accept everything she brings, including her full power. Tuya unveils the Buster Blade, an adamantite blade known as Dragon Killer. In his previous world, it was a level 300 exclusive armament, capable of shattering dragon scales. Lumina recoils in awe. Even without being swung, the armament's sheer presence shakes her body. The woman demands to know why he withheld it, with solemn gaze. Tuya warns her, mastery takes more than power. Using it recklessly could mean her death. Despite that, he confesses her entity inspired him from the beginning. The woman's determination had stayed with him ever since they met. Gripping her blade, Lumina smiles. Life or death, this was the confrontation she genuinely desired. As shouts demand Lumina to obey, she smirks, brushing them off. To her, this moment feels like fate, perhaps even love at first sight. Without hesitation, she charges. The noise of outsiders fades, leaving only the thrill of their duel. Tuya reflects silently. The man could walk away from conflict, leave this world's burdens behind, and live free. But his heart hesitates between two worlds. He questions which genuinely belongs to him. Still, he knows his answer. Though regrets may follow, this world and its citizens have previously become his own. Both warriors charge with final intent. Lumina unleashes her boosted power, while Tuya declares his unshakable resolve. The group's clash shatters the woodland floor. The impact sends debris flying, and Lumina crashing back. Her blade falling beside her, Tuya rises from the dust, his focus shifting to the remaining troops. One tries to strike but is swiftly overpowered. Startled by Lumina's fall, the ambassador falters. Yet Tuya's words reach all his way as chosen, and he demands no allegiance. With a burning aura, he warns them all, mercy is not anymore an option, not even for familiar faces. Accusations erupt as Dai questions why Tuya would turn on Lumina, a trusted comrade. Confusion and disbelief circulated among the crowd. Tears form as Dai begins to confess deeper feelings, struggling with the weight of what just occurred. Elsewhere, a man admits his actions were driven not by duty, but a longing for approval, exposing his own weakness. Morale breaks, troops flee in panic, unwilling to die for the Generate Kingdom or face someone of Tuya's power. As Tuya advances, one last man pleads for him to stop, but Tuya's fire-lit way shows no hesitation. Beside Lumina's unconscious body, Nathalia weeps, apologizing to Tuya for the pain he had to endure for their sake. The woman's tone trembles, acknowledging the cruelty of forcing him to strike down someone he once called comrade. Abruptly, Movement Lumina groans alive. Comfort spreads as others realize Tuya spared her in the end. With a nervous grin, Tuya admits his bluff. If he hadn't played the villain, the adventurer's Effendi might have died. The man turns solemn. The way home is shut. Currently, this world, scarred by his choices, has become his own. With the confrontation behind him, Tuya stands firm. If he's to live in this world afterward, he solitary will decide who to protect and who to struggle. One companion volunteers to handle healing, teasing him in jest. Even in conflict, compassion remains part of his determination. As Nathalia takes over, Tuya cradles Lumina softly, hoping she'll recover. The man's grin hides exhaustion, seeing troops advance. Nathalia prepares to join the fray, eager to support those who chose to stand for peace. The group know the foes aren't monsters but humans. Even so, they must not hesitate. Nathalia clenches her fist, vowing to reclaim her homeland. Behind her, someone recognizes a recognizable elf from the past. Terror spreads as whispers identify the girl as the feared Witch of Lunnet. Her presence solitary unsettles the opposition. Ignoring the panic, Nathalia and Char prepare to struggle. Collectively, they charge as orders to kill echo around them. A battalion of armored knights surge from the woodland, blades drawn and gaze chilly. Facing them stood two youthful mages, composed and unmoving, despite the hazard. Without hesitation, the purple-haired girl summoned flames to her hands, while her companion raised her staff, invoking the wind entity's power to intercept the charge. Sorcery tore through the advancing troops' blades of air, slicing the front lines as waves of fire scorched the ground, scattering the formation in chaos. Smoke blanketed the aftermath. A nobleman gazed at the fallen troops, his face twisted with disbelief. Elsewhere, allied fighters regrouped. Though winded, they readied themselves to strike before another spell could be unleashed. Charging fearlessly, a blonde fighter on horseback descended upon the opposition line, blade raised high. Afterward, beneath the trees, a girl stirred awake, her breathing shallow, close by. Her companion confirmed she had endured the earlier clash. Still dazed, she processed the circumstances. Most of their allies had previously retreated, avoiding what could have been a massacre. Memories surfaced, an elder's warning echoed if things went wrong. Survival mattered more than pride. Running wasn't cowardice, it was wisdom. Currently assembled under the trees, the remaining party readied to move. Despite his flaws, they consented to take the guildmaster with them. Kneeling beside a tree, a youthful knight proposed peaceful words of regret. Close by, the man he attempted to help sat solitary, too shaken to respond. Fighting back tears, the knight confessed his wish to be companions, knowing things couldn't be undone. His tone echoed through the woodland as emotions broke through. From farther away, two survivors watched in silence. The girl acknowledged that Ebran's earlier advice had been correct all along. Surrounding them, fallen troops lay still. Remaining would have meant sharing their fate. Currently, those responsible were captured, bound and trembling. They faced the consequences of the bloodshed. Encircled by allies, the captured noble was challenged. One of the party moved ahead, intent on getting answers. In defiance, the captive yelled threats, invoking his status and warning of retribution. The man's words, however, rang hollow beside the corpses of his comrades. Elsewhere, Char smiled brightly. Her success, she remarked, was due to training downplaying the hazard she had just faced. Own reassuring hand met her head. Despite the grim battlefield, a moment of peace passed between them. As the interrogation proceeded, the aristocrat pleaded for release, offering false promises and status in exchange for mercy. The captive noble disclosed the last card, his nation's champion. Curious, the party demanded details about this so-called champion. The man boasted proudly. Their champion was unmatched in clash, capable of toppling dungeons solitary and leading victories from the front lines. Hearing this, the blonde knight clenched his fists. Memories of past encounters resurfaced, and uncertainty crept in had the opposition grown even stronger. Mockingly, the aristocrat recounted the death of a respected general, describing the champion's merciless execution with twisted delight. Fury erupted. Blade drawn, the Beastkin fighter demanded retraction, refusing to let an insult to her parent go unpunished. Just as tension peaked, Tuya intervened, halting the Beastkin's blade. The others observed as he took control of the circumstances. He explained his reasoning: steadily killing the aristocrat could trigger war between two nations. No one desired that outcome. Grinning, the captive sensed his chance. The man demanded healing and safe passage, assuming he currently held the upper hand. Tuya cast healing sorcery, but his tone darkened. The man suggested a painful alternative, violence trailed by recovery spells. Terror gripped the aristocrat as Tuya proceeded. The man spoke of slicing him apart repeatedly, testing just how much pain the man could endure. Tuya stepped in yet again, demanding the aristocrat apologize for insulting Ar's father. The party stayed tense. Crumbling under pressure, the aristocrat pleaded for mercy. Moments afterward, he fled. When inquired, Tuya confirmed he had previously discovered everything he required. Attention shifted to the implications of what they heard. The party voiced concern that the opposition kingdom might use the skirmish as justification for a broader invasion. A map disclosed the strategic importance of Ryan. A fortress town along the route to Sarandir closed the Beastman's land. Learning Ryan was governed by Ara's grandfather, the party agreed they had to investigate its status before the opposition advanced. The party discussed their next steps. Char's decision to go along was left up to Tuya, who silently acknowledged it. Before departing, Char apologized for breaking Tuya's blade. The man brushed it off, saying time was short and the damage wasn't crucial. Still flustered, Tuya attempted to reassure her, only to be overwhelmed when she revealed the blade's deep sentimental value. To make up for it, Char offered him a fresh weapon, a mighty windsword with an enchantment to boost attack strength. Despite the gesture, she scolded him. Solving everything with objects, she remarked, wasn't always the right answer. With a soft grin, Char consented to accept the blade not as payment, but as a parting token. Before leaving, she tugged Tuya into a comforting embrace, teasing him affectionately while praising his chilled ale afterward. She clarified Ebrand's request and entrusted Tuya with a little package. The woman's task currently complete. She readied to return to the guild. Gazing across the open landscape, she pondered if her trip with Tuya had previously fulfilled its purpose, the keepsake swinging softly in her hand. Elsewhere, others spoke fondly of her bravery, how she risked herself so no one else would have to suffer. During their trip, a playful exchange embarrassed Tuya as the girls teased him, causing an embarrassed silence to settle in the wagon. The party proceeded traveling. Dusk painted the sky as they neared the next stop, just a few days from reaching Ryan. That night, they took shelter at a local guild house. The elf girl's loud reaction echoed through the hall the moment she advanced inside. Modern-looking toilets, bathtubs, and sinks left her utterly shocked. The woman's repeated shouts drew everyone's attention. Tuya clarified steadily, though the building emerged medieval, its inner workings resembled a house from Earth. No one could explain it, so they merely accepted it. In the comfort of the residence, Tuya summoned Ferris, the elf, lounging in luxury, proclaimed her wish to stay forever. Ferris disclosed she could manifest more easily indoors, especially in this magically enhanced space tied to Tuya's stone. Despite the composed atmosphere, Era's thoughts drifted to Ryan. She concerned about the looming hazard, especially if the opposition hero appeared again. Staring out the window, Tuya contemplated the name that maintained surfacing champion. Visions of war and bloodshed echoed in his mind. Though reluctant to join the war, he challenged whether he had the power to stop the champion if fate demanded it. Standing over fallen beasts, Tuya gripped his blade tightly, determined. He vowed to grow stronger, just sufficient to stand against the champion, when the time came. Several days afterward, the party emerged from the dense woods, spirits lifted as they neared their destination. The settlement of Ryan eventually came into view. Everyone gazed in peaceful awe, the looming walls a welcome sight. Comfort washed over Ara's face. The fort was still standing, guarded and intact. Within the gates, word of an approaching wagon circulated. One youthful fighter, Raul, recognized someone among the arrivals. As the wagon approached the gates, guards swiftly raised their weapons, demanding to know the travelers' identities. Stepping onward with a firm gaze, Charlotte readied to respond with dignity and authority. The woman proclaimed herself the first princess of the Elfinet Empire, returning to protect her citizens alongside the Sage of Twilight. With confidence, she commanded the gates to be unsealed, her presence radiating royal conviction. Skepticism lingered until familiar faces among the sentinels recognized her and Arthuria. Disbelief turned to awe, confirming the unbelievable reality the missing royals had returned. The troops eventually dropped their guard. One by one, they acknowledged Nathalia's presence, confirming the travelers' identities with awe and comfort. Cheers erupted across the fortress walls. News of Princess Charlotte's return circulated rapidly, filling the air with renewed morale and delight. Tuya, still surprised, faced toward Charlotte. Only currently did he genuinely grasp her royal lineage. The sentinels bowed in apology for their earlier treatment. Charlotte, gracious as ever, accepted with a soft smile. Shortly afterward, they were escorted deeper into the city. Ryan's Governor-General Goris awaited their arrival. Within the governor's residence, Goris greeted Charlotte and R warmly. The man's delight at their safety was clear. Despite his heavily bandaged condition, Charlotte charged forward in worry. Goris dismissed it with humor, admitting his age caught up to him more than the opposition did. Discussion turned grim. The imperial capital had fallen, and the Generate Kingdom's invasion was spreading with alarming speed. Exhaustion plagued both troops and civilians. With close-by forts lost, Ryan's defenses were stretched thin. As news of the Emperor's capture sank in, Nathalia voiced what all sensed action was required currently. But options were growing scarce. The party discussed their dilemma. Lack of information about the imperial capital hindered any action. The group required someone to infiltrate foe territory. As silence fell, a hand gradually rose. Everyone faced toward its owner, startled by the unexpected volunteer. Tuya smiled nervously, offering to check out the circumstances himself. The man's words were casual, but his intent was clear. The others reacted with astonishment. Tuya formally introduced himself as an explorer from Sarandir, willing to take the risk. Goris, however, hesitated. Though grateful, he acknowledged he didn't yet know if he could place that kind of trust in him. R shifted forward in frustration, defending Tuya. She prompted Goris that they were only alive due to his actions. To prove their closeness, the girls clung to Tuya from both sides, showering him with affection. The shocked explorer could barely respond. Seeing even Nathalia join in shoved Goris over the edge. The man's gaze narrowed at the sight. With rising fury, Goris roared, demanding to know if Tuya recognized the meaning of faithfulness. Asgoras threatened to engrave it into his skull. Tuya scrambled to defend himself, shouting that it was all a misunderstanding. Inside a wooden room, an elder beastman shares a sharp remark while a girl with horns grows visibly irritated. Moments afterward, she stands by a window, lost and considered. The youthful man approaches as she reveals that this town, Ryan, is where she was born and raised. The woman's gaze drifts over the courtyard. Memories of her household linger. But the realization that her parent will never return weighs heavily. One younger beastman steps onward, breaking the silence. The man speaks solemnly, referring to the champion. Turning to the cloaked man, the elder expresses his appreciation. The man thanks him for bringing both the queen and his granddaughter safely home. Tuya confidently declares his plan to infiltrate the imperial capital in search of critical information in a formal gathering. Elders question his decision. The group warn him of the dangers forward and point out that, as a foreigner, he has no obligation to take such risks. Remaining firm, Tuya explains that he has accepted an appeal as an explorer to escort the party to the capital, fulfilling his role. The man clarifies that he won't join the war directly but still wishes to contribute however he can. With determination in his gaze, he admits he might be the only one capable of facing the champion hidden within the capital. The girl urgently warns that even her mighty parent, Garrett, was defeated by the opposition. Unmoved, the elder laughs loudly, criticizing the youthful man for potential overconfidence, dismissing his power as recklessness. At the table, a composed tone counters the elder's doubts. Nathalia defends the youthful man, stating plainly that he's not misjudging his power. With conviction, she proclaims Tuya is a true sage, someone who has achieved what others only dream of. The revelation shocks everyone. Even legends like the Berserker are compared to him, elevating Tuya's status beyond ordinary adventurers. Amid the center of the discussion, the elder reveals that knowledge of the Berserker is restricted to successive emperors. Tuya swiftly realizes the possibility. If the emperor holds that wisdom, he may be the key to uncovering clues about the Berserker. Despite Nathalia's support, skepticism remains. The fighter expresses uncertainty, stating that trust must be obtained through strength. The elder challenges Tuya to prove himself in combat. Tensions rise as the girl leaps in to defend him, refusing to stand down even before her grandfather. Confronted with her determination, the elder accuses her of having feelings for Tuya. The woman's blushing face offers no denial, only silence. In front of everyone, the girl confesses her inner conflict, how her instincts draw her to mighty men, even to foes like the champion. Reflecting on her time with Tuya, she realizes it's not anymore just power that attracts her. One deeper bond has created through shared experience. With firm resolve, she declares her feelings for Tuya to be genuine and unwavering, regardless of what may come. Astonished by her conviction, the elder momentarily hesitates. Tuya calls her name, shifted by her honesty. Eventually, the elder embraces her with pride, accepting her choice. The man wishes her partner could have met his son Garrett as well. Currently respectful, acknowledges Tuya's resolve and formally asks if he can accept the appeal as an explorer. With a gesture of sincerity, the elder presents a decorated box to Tuya, beginning the formal exchange. Within the box lies the Dagger of Commandments, a mighty heirloom that even the imperial family must obey upon seeing its crest. The elder explains that showing the dagger will grant Tuya an audience with the emperor, ensuring his tone is heard. Task is disclosed: rescue the imperial household from imprisonment within the castle's dungeon. Only the legendary sage Tuya is trusted to accomplish such a task. With the emperor captured, the empire teeters on collapse. The party fears the realm's advance will cost many their homes and their families. Elsewhere, the suffering of the citizens deepens. Demi-humans face enslavement while the poor and orphaned can only await death in silence. Faced with the growing crisis, Tuya accepts the assignment. Though unsure how distant he can go, he promises to do all he can to help. In a surprising turn, the elder praises him as the future groom of his granddaughter, noting the ring as a symbol of commitment. Misunderstandings grow, but amidst the confusion, Tuya begins his magnificent task to save the empire. Despite advice against it, Tuya accepts a vague escort task. Though the reward remains undecided, he moves onward. Elsewhere, children mourn amidst stone markers. With the empire in chaos, they've lost their families and optimism, overwhelmed by despair. Shortly afterward, Tuya is confronted by his companions. Startled and puzzled, they demand to know why he refuses to take them along to the capital. He steadily explains the threat. All three are known in the imperial capital, and their presence risks exposing the entire operation. Elsewhere, reports confirm the Generate army is approaching. With the invasion looming, Tuya reminds everyone they each have a duty to protect Ryan. Nathalia is questioned about her knowledge of the imperial capital, and it's swiftly disclosed that she lacks experience. The elder assures them that while the chosen person is a little unusual, they are trustworthy. Though hesitant, the elder promises to introduce this guide to Tuya shortly. Nathalia seems uncertain but keeps peaceful for the moment abruptly. The princess insists on joining the assignment. The woman's emotional plea is clear. Tuya is heading to rescue her household, and she wants to be there. One lively child runs onward and scolds Tuya for being rude. The woman's guardian apologizes, explaining the child had long withdrawn. Until currently, news of the princess's return spreads swiftly. Villagers and refugees gather with optimism, shifted by the sight of familiar faces coming home. Excited voices confirm the rumors. Princess Charlotte is indeed safe. Even Nathalia notes how loved the imperial household is by the citizens. Overwhelmed, Charlotte apologizes to Tuya for acting selfishly. The elder reminds her she represents the hopes of everyone in town. With fresh resolve, Charlotte comforts a child, promising to fulfill her duties as a true member of the imperial household. Standing before a sizable crowd, she pledges to give courage to the citizens in her parents' stead. Tuya silently agrees. Charlotte stands before the citizens, thanking them for enduring until currently. While trying to finish her speech, nerves get the better of her. The woman stammers and bites her tongue, leaving her companions both concerned and sympathetic. Despite the slip, Charlotte smiles and wonders aloud if she can try anew. The crowd listens intently, shifted by her sincerity. The townspeople rally behind her. Encouraged by her bravery, they raise their arms and voices, ready to stand and struggle. As the excitement settles, Charlotte calls out to Tuya, signaling that she's ready for the next step in their task. Charlotte and her companions vow to defend Ran, entrusting Tuya with the assignment to rescue her parent and the imperial household. Tuya accepts without hesitation afterward. A peaceful barn stands in the countryside. It's a temporary moment of peace before the next trip begins. Tuya arrives with meal for Kokyu, his clash steed. The man apologizes for the delay and suggests they eat collectively. Abruptly, the warhorse affectionately grabs his head, startling him. A close-by girl panics, thinking the warhorse is attacking him. The woman swiftly realizes it's a misunderstanding, laughing. She remarks on how profoundly the warhorse has bonded with its master. Within the stable, a lively girl boldly asks how much Tuya is willing to sell his horse for. The man swiftly replies that Kokyu isn't for sale, she's household. The girl questions that sentiment, astonished he'd treat a monster so preciously. With an even smile, the girl notes that not all blood relatives are genuinely family, implying that bonds come from trust, not just blood. The woman casually reaches for the meal on the table, assuming they're headed to the capital collectively. Introducing herself, the girl reveals her name is Alice. The woman's a merchant who buys and sells things, and apparently eats without asking first. The elder explains Alice's background. She's from Sarandir, like Tuya, and has a contract with the Commerce Guild. Despite the hazard, Alice remains confident. The woman insists that logistics must continue, and merchants like her are employed to traveling even during war. She reveals she also knows the castle's layout and is trained in martial arts, greatly to everyone's astonishment. Tuya asks to confirm something with another companion. Upon his call, a refined woman named Ferris appears, prompting astonishment from Alice. Disbelief spreads through the chamber. Ferris is a house entity. Alice stares with disbelief, struggling to accept that such a being is traveling with them. Ferris asks if Alice is permitted to join the party. Before Tuya can answer, Alice playfully offers herself for sale, taken by surprise. By Ferris's calm, piercing stare, Alice panics and tries to cover her embarrassment with exaggerated dramatics, claiming she'll get shy. Plans are swiftly made. The group agree to depart early the next morning, and Alice cheerfully accepts, calling movement the life of a merchant. Though Tuya wants to introduce her to the others, Alice declines. The woman claims she still has preparations, dodging the moment. With a wave from the doorway, Alice promises to be at the north gate on time. Morning arrives with a change of plans. Deciding not to inform the others, Tuya silently parts ways close Gorris's estate. Arms crossed and expression sour, she mutters about the broken promise and grumbles over his lateness. Hearing footsteps, her mood lifts. A quick glance over her shoulder confirms he's eventually arrived. Although she hides her relief behind sarcasm. Kokyu, loyal but distant, too noticeable, must be left behind. Tuya pleads with the warhorse to understand that stealth matters this time. In response, the mare delivers a firm swat of her tail across his face. Alice smirks close by, amused by the scene. A smile spreads across his face as he flashes a peace sign. Thinking the warhorse has eventually understood, Kokyu's gaze narrows suspiciously. Instead of walking, he teleports the beast into storage. Alice is shocked, shouting with disbelief at the absurd idea of storing a living creature. Questions erupt as she runs toward him, demanding answers. Tuya only grins, feigning innocence while dodging her energetic accusations. The woman's frustration builds. The woman repeats his words about Kokyu's mood within the storage, proving she had been eavesdropping. With a confident smirk, she declares that merchants never miss information. Alice and Tuya begin their trip toward the imperial capital, traveling in a wagon through an immense and peaceful route surrounded by distant mountains. Elsewhere, in the heart of the Lunate Empire's imperial capital, the atmosphere contrasts sharply as palace structures loom over the cityscape. Larx receives yet another directive from his homeland to return, despite ongoing victory celebrations that he believes are unnecessary. As he reflects, he recalls his involvement in the war against the demi-humans, driven by the ideals of Princess Sharon's vision for a better nation. At Alice's suggestion, the party entered a stream of traveling merchants on the main route to the imperial capital. Though foe forces controlled the city, the busy route proposed cover. Checkpoint inspections were frequent, but none aroused suspicion. The sentinels overlooked the party, distracted in part by Alice's carefree singing. Progress stayed steady as they advanced through several gates. Upon arrival, Alice swiftly turned her focus to food. While Tuya contemplated on Alice's unpredictability, she proposed turning his cooking into a business. Impressed by its potential, from farther away, the capital's towering walls eventually came into view. The party reached at the towering gates of the imperial capital, known as the Gate of Happiness. Admiring its grandeur, they noted how the gate symbolized unity among races. Its cultural significance was so great that even foe forces had spared it. Abruptly, a soldier from the Generate army challenged their presence. Tension rose, but Alice stayed composed. Producing a merchant license, she claimed to be delivering provisions from Sarandir. The soldier accepted the explanation without resistance. With the documents in order, their wagon passed through smoothly amidst the crowd of traders and sentinels. Tuya clarified that Alice's merchant guise was critical to their task. The woman's role assisted them bypass restrictions, especially in a city still under foe occupation. News of Alice's covert activities commenced to circulate, startled by the possibility of her being a spy. In a moment of mischief, Alice playfully multiplied herself and teased him. The woman's behavior made it challenging to pin down her true intentions. Afterward, a bearded informant confirmed Alice's background. The woman had been trained among others who worked secretly for the Empire. Without denying it, Alice acknowledged to living in the shadows. Her tone stayed light, but her past was plainly distant from ordinary. Alice confidently brushed off concerns, assuring Tuya that no one would suspect her identity. From the public's view, she emerged as nothing more than a lively merchant. Delays at the city gates tested their patience. Entrance taxes had soared, and the party was compelled to wait hours before proceeding further. Despite the foreign occupation, the streets were packed with ordinary market life. Citizens bartered and shifted freely. The group's trip proceeded through the crowded city. Locals had surrendered early, preventing damage and preserving daily life. Although the surface seemed unchanged, Alice silently reflected that the capital not anymore seemed like the one she once knew. Within the occupied city, demi-humans were rounded up as slaves under strict Generate control. The sight troubled Tuya profoundly. One brave demi-human resisted, calling out the injustice. Sentinels reacted harshly, demanding obedience as the captive spoke out. Among the crowd, human citizens started questioning the circumstances. The group's recent vows of equality currently clashed with what they were witnessing. Tension increased rapidly. As conflict erupted, a guard hit the protesting captive, silencing him with force. Alice tugged Tuya aside, urging him to stay focused. Despite the chaos, they couldn't afford to lose sight of their true task. The demi-human captive made a last plea, calling for unity to reclaim the Empire. The man's words were cut short by a brutal blow from a guard's armament. Blood stained the ground. The troops cautioned that rebellion would be met with death, regardless of race. Alice urged Tuya to move on as they departed. He clenched his fist, realizing the cruel reality enforced by the Generate Kingdom. Before settling in, Alice prompted Tuya there was one more task to complete. The group's wagon proceeded through the stone-paved streets. They reached at a recognizable shop. Alice delivered provisions to a grateful merchant, who welcomed her warmly despite the supply shortage. Alice playfully charged a higher price for the goods, joking with the shopkeeper. Tuya observed silently, noting her ease in business. The group's focus shifted when a stranger was identified as the one holding a mysterious dagger. Tuya increased curious about the man's role. The shopkeeper, currently more serious, addressed him respectfully as guide and readied to lead them. Inside, the man disclosed a hidden passage beneath the city. The man's household had guarded the secret for generations, unknown to the general public. Tunnel led toward the castle's basement, an imperial evacuation route. Alice clarified that numerous families had aided the imperial bloodline from the shadows for generations. Fears of the hidden passage being discovered loomed sizable. Locals sensed powerless against the heavily guarded dungeon and doubted any optimism of resistance. Despite that terror, a man disclosed the reason for their patience. They had waited for the bearer of the Dagger of Commandments.
a relic capable of compelling imperial obedience. Tuya discovered that Goris had entrusted him with the dagger. Those surrounding him started to wonder about his true identity. To carry such an armament was hardly just a duty, but a sign to lead the Empire's future. His reputation was previously widespread, known for his involvement with several prominent women, including the aristocrat Nathalia. The guide reacted with awe, impressed that someone of Nathalia's status had acknowledged Tuya. Worry turned to urgency as Tuya challenged the preparation timeline. The guide insisted on needing 10 days, warning that acting too shortly could end in failure. The group's biggest obstacle was disclosed. The castle was currently under the control of Lasset, the third prince of the Generet kingdom. Just afterward, a fresh figure reached. Larx, the champion, emerged before them. The man's presence signaled the start of a fresh and possibly decisive chapter. Seated on the throne, Prince Lasset dismissed concerns from his homeland. The man stated yet another appeal from his sister to return the envoy. Despite the lingering hazard of foe forces, Lasset stayed confident. The man instructed the envoy to show his face to Princess Sharon instead. The prince insisted on staying behind, claiming full control of the circumstances. The man even proposed the envoy a fallen crown as a memento. With a chilly grin, Lasset proclaimed his personal task to purge all demi-humans, whom he viewed as vile creatures, using his own hands. In his original world, demi-humans didn't exist, making this brutal hatred unfamiliar and unsettling. While battling monsters close a village, the armored man was abruptly summoned by the Generet kingdom. The man awoke in a fresh world, greeted by the tearful Princess Sharon, who claimed to have summoned him in desperation. Encircled by nobility, Sharon embraced him as the long-awaited true champion. From that day onward, his identity as a champion was established. Over time, Sharon taught him about the world's workings, including the supposed evil nature of demi-humans. The woman also claimed the Generet kingdom faced collapse, blaming the Lunnet Empire for siding with demi-human allies. Determined to meet Princess Sharon's expectations, Larx devoted himself to intense daily training, sharpening both ability and resolve. Eventually, he led the realm's forces into clash. With blade raised, Larx rallied the troops, declaring they would reclaim lost lands from the Empire. On the battlefield, the opposition general eventually appeared. Garrett von Milda, the Lunnet Empire's knight captain. Confident and composed, Larx accepted. The man's allies thought victory was certain, as the tide of war leaned in their favor. Memories of Sharon's plea echoed in his mind. With her words fueling him, Larx was ready to strike down Garrett and end the war. The intense duel between Larx and Garrett reached its peak. The group's weapons clashed in a flurry of strikes. Fatigue crept in as Larx understood he had burned too much stamina. Garrett, still composed, criticized his overconfidence and wasteful power. With heavy steps, Larx fell back. Garrett proclaimed that experience, not raw power, decides victory, and this was still a battlefield. Refusing to yield, Larx prompted himself of his isolation in this world. The man vowed not to lose, knowing defeat would erase everything he had earned. Summoning hidden power, Larx infused his blade with sorcery. Garrett recoiled in disbelief as the champion unleashed a last decisive power. One mighty explosion rocked the battlefield. In the midst of chaos, Larx contemplated that his only purpose in this unfamiliar world was to continue being a champion. Garrett, bruised and weakened, knelt from the force of the blow behind him. Larx stood firm, blade still glowing with sorcery. Both men acknowledged the unexpected outcome. Garrett acknowledged his astonishment at Larx's hidden power. With gratitude in his tone, Larx thanked Garrett. The group's struggle had shoved him further, helping him grow stronger than ever before. Garrett, though vanquished, expressed no bitterness. As a fighter, he sensed no shame in losing to someone worthy of the title champion. As he fell, Garrett expressed a single regret: he would never see his daughter in her bridal gown. Rumors were swiftly circulated to demoralize the Imperial army, claiming Garrett begged for mercy before dying. In private, Larx contemplated on the honor of battling Garrett. Although he still held disdain for demi-humans, the clash had stirred something deeper in him. Despite his doubts, Larx resolved to continue onward. For the sake of Princess Sharon and the realm, he vowed to remain an armament of conquest. With his task complete, Larx stated his return to the home country. Behind his formal command, a peaceful sigh disclosed lingering uncertainty. As news spread of the hero's presence and withdrawal, Alice steadily assessed the circumstances. The woman suggested they wait and see how things would unfold. While riding, Tuya emerged, distracted. Silently, he questioned whether the hero Larx would remember him after all this time. Arriving at their usual inn, the two were greeted with comforting familiarity. The innkeeper expressed worry for Alice's safety since they last visited. Curious, the woman challenged whether Tuya was someone special to Alice. The group's vague responses only deepened her suspicion. Before Tuya could react, Alice boldly claimed they were newlyweds.
Her lively declaration left him shocked as they requested a room collectively. The innkeeper, believing them to be newlyweds, proposed them a private room despite the ongoing disturbances in the city. Alice joked about their marriage, claiming financial support as her reason. Tuya reacted awkwardly. Afterward, an abrupt magical signal startled Tuya. Alice also sensed something off and paused. Alert to an unusual presence, suspicion increased. Alice acknowledged she sensed something strange within the inn, hinting at a hidden danger they hadn't yet seen. The party arrived at an unusual-looking inn, its structure slightly odd, prompting suspicion. Something about it sensed off. Inside, one of them sensed multiple citizens assembled suspiciously in a room on the third floor. Believing an attack was imminent, the man ready to act. But the girl swiftly intervened, trying to prevent a misunderstanding. To diffuse the circumstances, she pretended they were a newlywed couple deepening their bond. The innkeeper, startled, accepted the explanation. Moments afterward, another worry emerged. Someone suspected the landlady of hiding fugitives within the inn. It was disclosed that the landlady had long aided the imperial household from the shadows. The woman's connections rushed deeper than expected as a door creaked open. Whispers of recent demi-human hunts surfaced, drawing a connection to those hiding within the chamber. Inside, a party of wary demi-humans stood ready to defend themselves, clutching weapons with tense expressions. Worry replaced terror as injuries grew apparent. The landlady advanced in, urging composed and clarifying their true status as victims, not threats. Assembled in the chamber were refugees, those who couldn't escape the imperial capital in time and currently sought shelter. The recent demi-human hunt had left deep scars. Troops raised their shelters, setting fire to the very places they hid, determined to help. The youthful man approached an injured demi-human, offering healing magic to treat the wounds. Astonishment circulated as pain vanished instantly. The sorcery worked flawlessly, bringing unexpected comfort to the suffering. Shifted by optimism, survivors pleaded for more help, revealing that numerous others stayed hidden and hurt in the Adventurers Guild. Without hesitation, he consented to assist. Tears welled as one girl, clinging to her sister, murmured the fate of their household. One companion challenged the intent behind helping strangers, reminding the others of their original task. The conversation shifted as deeper emotions surfaced. The injustice faced by the demi-humans weighed heavily on everyone's conscience. Alice was taken by surprise by the observation. One look of vulnerability she had never shown before had emerged. As emotions stirred, she disclosed her own pain. She too had lost her household, hiding it behind humor and sarcasm. Despite calling them monsters and fairies, she currently recognized what household meant. That bond gave her the power to protect others. The rescued party expressed heartfelt gratitude, vowing to repay the kindness shown, even if no reward could be proposed. Currently, trusting the inn's protection, the party was left in safe hands, while the others readied to move onward. Alice, reflecting on her own transparency, acknowledged defeat in her role as a spy, her emotions plainly visible. Despite occupation by foreign forces, the city's main street stayed unexpectedly vibrant, life continuing amidst uncertainty. Vendors and troops exchanged goods and pleasantries, showcasing an unusual sense of normalcy under occupation. While strolling through the market, they observed how Generate troops freely shopped among civilians, despite being foes, though only humans could do so. The Generate kingdom's prosperity, it was clarified, stemmed from deep-rooted prejudice and exploitation of demi-human labor and hatred. From their position, the imposing capital was plainly visible. A troubling considered surfaced was the realm's champion supporting this system knowingly. Shortly, they reached the magnificent Explorers Guild. Its enormous structure stood as a symbol of imperial power and bureaucracy. Despite their intentions, they were turned away. No fresh requests were being accepted, dashing their hopes for immediate work. Within the Explorers Guild, the job board sat empty. Most capable adventurers, especially demi-humans, had left for the war. To support his claim, the youthful man presented guild cards from the hidden injured. Though skeptical, the staff commenced to listen. One senior staff member intervened, leading them to a restricted area below the basement, typically for training, had been repurposed. As the heavy door unsealed, astonishment washed over their faces. The reality inside exceeded expectations. Dozens of injured lay scattered across the floor. The chamber was packed with wordless suffering and desperate hope. The chamber was packed with the injured. Over 200 citizens lay in pain, the scale overwhelming. Although the guild had a healer, their capacity was limited. Healing everyone was impossible with conventional sorcery. Faced with the sheer number of wounded, despair set in. But one of them declined to look away, driven by conviction. An abrupt declaration broke the tension. He thought he could help them all. The others observed in disbelief as he moved ahead. Realizing that healing one by one would be inefficient, he began preparing a method to heal them in one instant. Standing at the center of the chamber, he unleashed a mighty spell area, High Heal, sending radiant waves across the wounded. The healing sorcery pulsed not once, but 6 times in rapid succession, stunning everyone with its overwhelming range and power all around. Injured bodies stirred, wounds sealed, pain faded, and gaze packed with wonder. Gratitude circulated as healing took hold. Even Alice sensed the lingering effects, astonished at how thoroughly his sorcery restored power. It defied all expectations of magical norms. Yet, not all could be rescued. A peaceful corner disclosed a life lost too late to heal, leaving sorrow amidst the comfort. They stayed wordless by the fallen, recognizing the victim as Thor's companion from the inn. The loss weighed heavily. Despite all efforts, they accepted the painful reality: once life is gone, it cannot be restored. Grief settled silently in the chamber before departing. The youthful man offered medicines and food from his inventory, insisting there was no need for repayment. An enormous supply of meat emerged from his storage, enough to sustain the party for several days. Reactions ranged from awe to confusion, especially as his seemingly endless storage proceeded to defy logic and expectation. As they readied to leave, Alice abruptly thanked Tuiya. Although she brushed it off, her gratitude was sincere. Clinging to his arm, she teased him about their fake marriage, casually suggesting she wouldn't mind if it were real. The woman pointed out the advantages: access to his storage and magical objects, grinning mischievously at the idea of shared assets. Still holding on, she insisted it was only fair to support him after expending so much sorcery, helping steady his steps. The woman's tone softened with a trace of regret. If she'd had even a fraction of his talent, her household might have stayed. Tuiya acknowledged he came from a prestigious sorcery household, but lacked talent, leading to his peaceful abandonment. Alice contemplated on her own upbringing, grateful to those who raised her, yet still feeling the emptiness of being left behind. A market, her playful attitude returned, bickering with vendors and showing her warmth beneath the teasing exterior. Elsewhere, Tuiya struggled with exhaustion. The man's sorcery use had drained him more than expected, prompting doubts about his limits as a sage. Looking to the sky, he pondered grimly: if he had to struggle the champion currently, he wouldn't stand a chance. One mysterious cloaked figure crossed paths with Tuiya. Tension hung in the air as they locked gaze briefly. In the crowded marketplace, Tuiya turned to watch the man vanish into the bustle, sensing something off about him. At a wagon stop, the hooded man, currently called Lark, was greeted by an escort. The man's visit to the imperial capital had served a purpose. Wordless moment passed. Both men, currently shown side by side, appeared destined for confrontation, 2 paths diverging toward inevitable conflict. When challenged by a soldier, Lark brushed off his unease. But something in the sky had plainly unsettled him. As Lark gazed at the sky, he silently admired the freedom of birds, even in times of uncertainty. Before continuing his trip, returning to the inn, Alice and Tuiya were gratefully recalled. The group's efforts had delivered comfort and healing to numerous. The landlady shared news that Thor, even in loss, had expressed his thanks, his resilience, moving those who heard it. When inquired about Tuiya's whereabouts, she clarified he had chosen solitude in the barn, needing time to reflect. Inside, Tuiya conversed with a woman. Despite crossing paths only briefly with the champion, she hadn't been forgotten after all. Tuiya silently contemplated on the odds of fighting the champion. Doubts lingered, but he attempted to convince himself it would be okay. Ferris, with a comforting grin, reassured him. Both she and Kokyu thought in his power without hesitation. Grateful for their support, Tuiya thanked them sincerely. He hoped to grow stronger, not just for himself, but to ease their worries. Elsewhere, Alice searched for him, unaware of his peaceful resolve forming beneath the moonlit sky. Inside, laughter returned. Encouraged by those surrounding him, Tuiya's spirit slowly started to lift. Hesitating beyond the barn, Alice reconsidered entering. Thoughts of lacking magical talent haunted her as she clutched a keepsake ring. She murmured to a distant memory, Aunt Nathalia, wondering if she had genuinely been abandoned or merely left behind. Distant away, in the heart of the imperial capital, a rescue plan was previously in motion following the champion's departure. The assignment to retrieve the emperor was set to commence in 5 days' time. Under the veil of night assembled over a modest feast, the party agreed caution was essential. One mistake could jeopardize every supporter involved. Just as the party discussed their plans, a visitor from the guild reached. Tension rose as Tuiya understood the stakes. Failure meant execution for all. At the guild, he was welcomed with a gift and gratitude, a reminder of the promise to repay him. The acting guildmaster, Georgia, praised Tuiya's deeds, though plainly drunk. His enthusiasm was genuine and unexpected. Tuiya attempted to remain focused, declining the wine and requesting answers. The bizarre energy of Georgia only made him more suspicious. Abruptly, Georgia's tone shifted. He disclosed Tuiya's hidden identity, exposing wisdom of a violent past that Tuiya considered was buried. Georgia, the sub-guild master of the imperial capital, confidently identified Tuiya as the figure behind the envoy troops' destruction. Offering a drink with a smirk, he confirmed his suspicion. While Tuya's thoughts raced plainly, word of his actions had traveled fast. As they spoke privately in the study, Georgia recalled hearing of an uncommon cleric from Sarandir with a unique storage talent. Turning to a stone statue, he disclosed a memory shared by its sculptor, an elderly connection leading back to the infamous Ebrand. With a sigh, Georgia clarified that he and Ebrand exchanged letters for years, keeping tabs on Tuya through trusted correspondence. Tuya listened in astonishment, as Georgia mentioned receiving letters packed with worry about him, hinting at deeper involvement from someone behind the scenes. While recalling Tuya's escape with the princess, Georgia disclosed that his actions had branded him a criminal, leaving him unable to return to Sarandir. Avoiding direct interrogation, Georgia instead inquired about Charlotte's whereabouts, suspecting she had shifted to Ryan to avoid further attention. Taken by surprise, demanded answers only to learn that a freed noble had reported everything to Georgia. Details emerged of troop movements in Charlotte's flight, confirming she was currently in Ryan with Captain Garrett's daughter struggling with guilt. He regretted not eliminating the hazard earlier. The consequences currently endangered his allies. Refugees at the guild had already spread word of the threat, warning that even independent groups wouldn't escape the realm's wrath. Faced with limited resources, Georgia clarified they couldn't offer a proper reward. Wounded members had to be left untreated. Own receptionist shortly returned with Tuya's guild card, signaling that their preparations were complete. Though the mood was tense, Georgia insisted on sharing a drink. The man's gesture, though modest, was meant as sincere appreciation. One glint of gold confirmed the card's authenticity. Tuya had reached a rank at just 16. Despite not submitting any formal requests, his actions were processed as a completed guild task under Georgia's authority. Still astonished by the outcome, he expressed disbelief, while Georgia casually noted his interim power until a fresh master was chosen. Holding the card in silence, Tuya cast a glance toward the familiar statue as Georgia gazed on without a word. Urgent news reached Rian was under hazard. Even if the king were rescued, abandoning the plan currently could mean losing everything. Confidence filled his tone as he chose to entrust Ryan's defense to Nathalia and Lord Gorus. Although worry lingered, his companion acknowledged the two warriors were more than capable of handling regular troops. With their power levels displayed, it grew clear just how formidable his allies had become, perhaps still more than intended. Staring out the window, he set his trust in those he trained, shifting focus toward the assignment forward. Distant away, inside a stone fortress, an emperor stayed defiant, as demands pressed him to bring the conflict to an end. Prince Lisette of the Generate Kingdom gave a bold order to force the demi-human region into total submission. Beyond the prison gates, his troops attempted to intimidate those within, claiming victory in advance. Threats escalated as Lasset cautioned a captive that his household safety hinged on cooperation, gesturing toward a close-by cell. With a smirk, he disclosed wisdom of Princess Charlotte's location and proclaimed his troops were previously en route. Feigning concern, Lisette hoped they'd arrive in one piece masking malice, wearing a smile as shackles clinked in the shadows. Several days passed as the party readied for a covert infiltration under the looming shadow of the castle. New gear was handed out, stealth-enhancing clothes, and an uncommon dagger boosted agility and drop rates, perfectly suited for the assignment ahead. While one eagerly geared up, another clarified the equipment was only on loan, not a gift. A knock at the door delivered unexpected allies, demi-humans, who could not anymore remain hidden and were ready to act. The group's role would be critical, distracting the city sentinels with chaos, while the main party slipped into the castle unnoticed. Determined voices packed the chamber. For the sake of their comrade, they were willing to risk everything. Outside, grim reminders of the realm's cruelty hung in silence. Opposition had a price everyone recognized. Resolute expressions hardened. Letting the Generate Kingdom continue unchallenged was hardly any more an option. As dusk settled over the peaceful streets, their promise was clear: rescue the prince and return safely. Opportunity wouldn't come twice. With tension mounting, they understood this next move had to count. Success hinged on perfect timing. As the party assembled, closed the hidden passage, one of them asked what would happen after their return. Supporters stood united, ready to risk their lives to escort the team out of the capital if they succeeded. Warnings were shared: sorcery would be ineffective within the dungeon due to a special ore, leaving even healing spells unusable. Despite the limitations, confidence stayed formidable. If anyone could handle the assignment without sorcery, it was Tuya. Encouraged by their faith, he made his move, determined to prove worthy of their trust and complete the rescue. By their guide, the party descended into the cavern system beneath the castle under torchlight and urgency. Despite her unusual pacing, the others trailed closely as she barked orders, making sure no one strayed. Twisting tunnels stretched endlessly, and she cautioned them never to leave her side or risk being lost forever. Curiosity arose when she disclosed her familiarity with the castle, admitting she once lived there with her aunt. That revelation suggested noble ties, leaving her comrades wondering just how high her family status once reached. An abrupt dead end made the party uneasy, but Alice laughed it off, revealing it was just a joke. After some searching, they discovered a hidden door tucked away an unexpected entrance into the castle. Within the storage area, the tone shifted. Everyone was instructed to stay close and exercise more caution moving onward. As they advanced, Alice hesitated. Time had shifted the layout, and her memory not anymore supplied reliable guidance. With nervous laughter, she attempted to stay optimistic, while her companion, now wary, was not anymore buying her confidence. Facing the risk of discovery, Tuya called out to Ferris for help navigating the castle undetected. As Ferris emerged in her entity form, she was inquired to locate the underground prison, her response hesitant but hopeful. Alice was visibly startled to learn that the resident's entity could speak, though Tuya insisted he had mentioned it before. Despite the oddity, Alice adapted swiftly, earning Tuya's wordless praise for her flexibility in unusual situations. With trust set in Ferris, Tuya gave a peaceful nod, signaling her to begin guiding them deeper through foe territory. Raising her hand, Ferris activated her innate talent structure control, instantly connecting to the castle's entire framework. Through this power, she could sense even the smallest movement, down to a shift of dust, no matter how sizable the structure. Her scan disclosed 3 prisoners within a cell, but cautioned that sentinels packed the area, making stealth nearly impossible, despite the risks. The party pressed onward. Ferris consented to guide them directly, knowing conflict would be inevitable. Watching from the side, Alice nervously challenged her role, unsure if she was still required in the assignment. 2 sentinels stood forward, unaware of the party's presence as they casually monitored the corridor. Alice volunteered to handle them discreetly, knowing that any mistake might trigger alarms and summon reinforcements. One specialized tool was handed to her, a case of golden bee paralysis needles, designed to immobilize targets with high probability. Additional support came in the form of sleeping incense, capable of knocking out lower-level foes, leaving Alice both astonished and impressed. Before acting, she couldn't help but wonder about the resale value, prompting Tuya to postpone any talk of business until afterward. As the sentinels chatted idly, Alice launched her assault, swiftly disabling one before he could react. Both fell swiftly, collapsing under the effects of the tools supplied. The team shifted in, undetected and unharmed. The paralyzing needle and incense proved effective. Alice confirmed their usefulness while smoothly preparing for another takedown. With agile precision, she disabled another pair of sentinels. Her skills obtained praise, although she brushed it off modestly. Ferris pointed out the prisoner's location forward. Close the door. A ring of keys signaled the final step was close. Tuya thanked Ferris and inquired her to return to the necklace, her task complete. Collectively, he and Alice shifted ahead with renewed urgency. Silently, she hoped for the safety of the captured royal. A decade earlier, youthful Alice had discovered her Aunt Nathalia was leaving on a trip, and confusion packed her heart. Frustrated and tearful, she sensed abandon, believing her inability to use sorcery made her a burden. A soft explanation trailed. Nathalia's departure was to grow stronger and to protect Alice from the hardships forward. Alice recalled the king's kindness from her youth. Back afterward, she vowed to become useful and serve as a spy in return. Within the prison, they eventually located the cell. One figure sat motionless behind bars, and their pace quickened. Terror hit them as they neared. Alice charged forward, her heart sinking at the sight, wounded and chained. The captive was barely conscious. The group's faces turned grim as reality settled in.